The 3 points of the triangle does not only represent the basis of the Pythagorean theorem or one of the trickiest circuits in NASCAR, but it represents the number of remaining races to punch your ticket into the MPI Cup Series Season 3 playoffs. And with that, all these drivers will take a trip down to the Tricky Triangle at Pocono Raceway for round number 13 of the MPI Cup Series at Pocono for the Tricky Triangle 225 at Pocono Raceway. Glad to have you along for the ride tonight live on Podium Esports alongside Kenneth Bueno and Michael Guerrilla. I am Devin Henry. Gary Section's behind the scenes at Podium, pushing all the buttons for us here live. Well, guys, the Tricky Triangle, it's certainly a fun one here tonight because not 4 corners, but 3. At that 3 very unique corners, Kenneth, that makes it a very interesting track to strategize for long green flag runs.
Yeah, Devin, and this track usually is known for these long green flag runs, but these corners, when I look at Pocono Raceway in any capacity, I think of this race as sort of a 3-headed beast. Each corner has its different challenge, and if you can conquer one, that's fine, but you have to conquer all 3 in order to really put on good laps and good consistent performances at this venue. But, I mean, again, 3 races left into the playoffs, and this is quite possibly a curveball to a lot of drivers, putting themselves in this kind of position where they may have to use their minds a little bit more on the box in order to be there at the checkered flag tonight.
And of course, Michael Guerrilla, the 2-time iRacing eNASCAR Coca-Cola Series competitor, you've had to tackle this Tricky Triangle a number of times, and so it's kind of said you have to conquer all 3 corners. What's the mindset like going into a race like tonight with 3 very unique corners? Oh, and also there's the other 30-some-odd guys that you have to beat as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a unique approach compared to like our mile and a half that we've seen a lot of during the season here in the MPI Cup Series. It's a whole different layout. Like you said, each corner is different on each end, but it's also kind of a prepper for next week what's to come with Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So this is going to be a precursor to what's to come next week when they go to Indianapolis. But it's just a fun little track layout in general. I mean, it's something different that we normally don't see on the schedule. It's not a normal 4-turn track that we see all the time. So it's definitely fun, and this is one of the better tracks that I've personally driven on. I mean, the old version, the old layout, the old scan they had was really rough, really bumpy. It was really fun to drive. Now with this newer layout, it's a little bit easier to drive, a little bit smoother, so there's less interaction with the track between the car, and it's going to be really different to see how these guys tackle it tonight.
And the rules are simple in the MPI Cup Series. Win, and you are in. If you don't win, though, you will have to be stuck in this very tight points battle that we have right on the cut line. You're looking at your top 16, but one of the drivers below this cut line has won a race, that being John Kinder. That moves the cut line down. The distance between Brian Fine and Kevin Rockwell for the last spot in the playoffs is 1 single point. If you're Justin Hendry, Brian Fine, Kevin Rockwell, Kip Beasley, Ray Richer, nothing is guaranteed coming into these final 3 races.
Yeah, certainly nothing is guaranteed. And with these tracks, I think Michael says it, Indianapolis Motor Speedway coming after this. And of course, we end the regular season at Bristol. So these last 3 races, including this one here tonight at Pocono, is going to be the biggest challenge. And we've talked about it ever since the All-Star race. This second half of the season, for guys like Fine, for guys like Rockwell, this is where you have to set up your run to the playoffs. And now time is running out, so that 1-point buffer could change dramatically at the end of this race, and maybe even more throughout the next 2.
Well, let's go ahead and take a look at everything that these drivers will have to face on the Tricky Triangle. And Michael, here in Pocono, Pennsylvania, oh man, this track, it gets you every now and again, right? With these long straightaways, you can draft a little bit.
Yeah, drafting is going to be really crucial tonight, and it's going to be a way to maximize your track position. Having that draft is going to be crucial, and getting those runs out of these corners. You have such long straightaways on the exits of turn 1 and turn 3, so you really have to maximize your exits when it comes down to those corners. And then carrying that momentum down through turn 2, the short shoot on the exit of that corner, basically half the length of both the straightaways on the opposite ends of the speedway. That's where you want to maximize as much speed as you can, carry as much speed as you can through turn 2. On the old configuration, you'd have to lift a lot just because of how rough that surface is. But now with the repave, you could throw that thing down on the flat and get a lot of speed going through there. So it's gonna be really good to set up passes for turn 3, where you can utilize multiple lines to set up every move.
3-stage race. Stage number 1 concludes on lap 20. Stage 2 concludes on lap 45. And the final stage will conclude the race at lap 90. Your starting lineup tonight. Your pole sitter, Justin Gann, with another great performance out in qualifying. Zach Wilson, another front row start for him. And how about Austin Shoemaker for Prestige Worldwide Racing? That whole team has had troubles throughout the past few races. He gets a great starting spot in the 3rd position. John Kinder, he just won a couple weeks ago. He will start today in 6th. Watch out for a few guys in the back of this top 10. Zachary Taylor, Warren Kyle Keith. They know how to get around a lot of different tracks in the MPI Cup Series, Kenneth.
They certainly do. Back to 11th, Garrett Brown in the 21 season 1 champion. That's where he will roll off. All-star race winner Alex Muscarella will be alongside him, and a new driver, Christopher Bedwell, starting his first race in this series in 13th. Defending champion Ray Rogers will roll off even further back in 15th, before you find guys like Kevin Hurley, Daytona winner Ray Richer in the 18th spot, league owner Dakota Curtis, and Adam Lancaster, another new face in this series, to cap off the top 20.
Looking outside the top 20, you find a few of our cutoff drivers, like Brian Fine back in 21st, Sean Kalis 23rd, Chris Progar back in 26th. A lot of these guys will be jockeying for position early on in the race, looking to hold on to that points gap as we're closing in the final 3 races before playoffs. Just outside that is also Kevin Rockwell 28th and Travis Stevens. So a lot of that playoff battle is going to be outside the top 20.
And as we look through the remainder of the grid here, guys, when you look at the tricky triangle, a lot of people think about, like we've been mentioning, those different corners. We've looked over the draft. But how about fuel and tire conservation when we come to a track like Pocono? Because while we will have these stage breaks, only 4 extra sets of tires in the pits. Is there a way to strategize your way up front if you're some of these guys outside, say, the top 15, top 20 in qualifying?
The answer, Devin, is a resounding yes. This track has been known time and time again for fuel mileage races. I can even recall a couple years back when Ryan Blaney won this race a little bit ago on some of that strategy. We've seen a couple drivers do so in the real-life NASCAR Cup Series. That certainly means that you can definitely do it in the sim. So for those guys, they are mired back in the field, that are on that cut line, but that does not mean that where they start determines where they will finish. This is a long race, guys. 90 laps here from Pocono, a 2.5-mile venue, so that leaves a lot of room for strategization and a lot of mind games to be played against the rest of the field, and that could come to their benefit tonight.
And mind games are just half of it. You look at the weather conditions, the track temperature at 4:30 p.m. sim time. Michael, 96 degrees track temp, so these drivers won't just be fighting themselves and their tires. They'll be fighting the track as well tonight.
Yeah, it's relatively hot for this area up at the Poconos in Pennsylvania, so 96 degrees is a little bit hot, and these guys have to contend with that as they're going through the bumps. As we mentioned, they're a little smoother with the updated scan, but these guys will definitely be tackling it, and it's also going to play into factor with the draft, as we were mentioning, with the fuel strategy going to be a part of it as well. It's getting as much draft as you can to save as much fuel as you can, especially early on in these stages. It's going to be very crucial to how you play your strategy when it comes down to stage 3 and knowing what your fuel numbers are going to be.
Going through turn 3, and that's all, folks. For all you road course racers, this is not your oval. This is the tricky triangle. The iRacing Pace Sedan peels off of turn number 3 down the front straightaway and peels off onto pit road. 3 races to punch. You're ticking to the playoffs. The tricky triangle, 225 is green. Justin Gann, Zach Wilson leads the field across the start-finish line. Shuffling down into turn number 1, it's Zach Wilson getting the phenomenal jump on the outside to lead through 1. Gang gets the run off the inside, though. And the 30 looking to lead this first lap as they head into the tunnel turn.
And you see the field just fan out, but things will narrow quick as they head to turn 2. Gann still with the advantage and head up to third. Saw a couple drivers wash up wide. That does include one of the Shoemakers, Austin Shoemaker, down in the 14 machine with John Kinder and the 19 of Roswell Harlow around him. They stay single file, and a big lead for Justin Gann, but everybody else packed in as they head off turn 3.
And it doesn't matter who you are or what you're doing. As we watch the 95, a newcomer to this series here, Christopher Bedwell, on the outside part of this track. When iRacing updated the track surfaces a few weeks ago, most leagues are still trying to come together and figure out what these track dynamics will do when you have 40 cars on the track. And so, Michael, what are your thoughts that this Pocono track is going to do as this race goes on? Will we have those multiple grooves that all these drivers running 3-4 lanes right now want to see all 90 laps?
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be a factor when it comes down to it in turn 3, especially. You used to be able to run the quote unquote grip strip, as there's a section of pavement on the very high side of turn 3. It used to be a viable lane compared to running the flat on the very bottom. But turns wouldn't, I don't think that's going to be a viable strategy at all, just because of the way the banking has progressed. As you see the multiple lines down here coming through turns 3 with Richard Swavely at the back end of this group right here, it's just going to show that's going to be where it's going to be the crucial part for passing. These guys are going to set the pass, backing up entry to turn 3 and launching off the exit on the high side to get a run off the corner, so that way they can maximize their straightaway speed and get a chance to make a pass going to the turn 1.
Swavely tailing John Kinder in the number 12 machine. Kinder winning 2 weeks ago at the 1.5 mile at Atlanta Motor Speedway to lock his way into the playoffs, and now there is a minimum race requirement, so he will have to make every single race from here on out. And now looking at Dakota Curtis with the SimMax number 11 for MPI, the series sponsor. Just in front of him, though, is Ray Rogers. A little bit hot, a little bit not sometimes, but you know that 18 is here to contend. 3 wins this year right now, right in that outside lane.
And also rocking a brand new paint scheme tonight. Usually don't see him in these colors of blue and yellow. I think Camelbacks on his car tonight, apart from the usual Rowdy Energy, maybe MPI and some of the other sponsors that he reps here in this series. You see him just trying to get around the 97 of Kevin Hurley, but as we speak, it continues to stay single file. And that's one thing we're going to notice here, Devin. Long runs at Pocono seem to be a very characteristic of this track. So once you see long runs kick in, the tires start to wear down, the field slowly will start to string out. Things will start to become heavier in terms of the gaps, and we'll see this field start to spread out. Exactly what we've seen between the top 3. They've pretty much run away from this field as they head to turn 2.
He gets around Kevin Hurley. Right now, Alex Muscarella hounding the rear bumper of Christopher Bedwell, the 95, for the final spot in the top 10. Lots of close quarter racing here pretty early on still in the race, coming to begin lap number 5, this time by the start finish line. But we've had Justin Gann show off quite a bit of speed here in the most recent weeks. And for the number 30 machine, you would love to see another great run out of this team, because Flashpoint Racing, new to the MPI Cup Series this year, and trying to make a name for themselves, and Gann's been making sure of that here the past few weeks.
Yeah, and we've talked about it, especially at Atlanta 2 weeks ago, where the fact that he's just shown a lot of short run speed and a lot of qualifying pace. He just hasn't been able to put a race together yet. So he's once again in another great spot, leading already early in this race, and he's going to show his dominance so far over the first 5 laps. So we'll have to see if he translates that throughout the rest of these stages. Want to update one driver that was close on the cutoff and just had a minor incident. Bill Schoonover, the number 7 machine, he tagged the outside wall of turn 2 that last time by through the tunnel turn. He's got a lot of right side damage on that vehicle, so that's going to be a hindrance to him for the rest of this race. And at a track where aero is so important, that even the slightest of crinkles that he has on that right front fender is going to cost him a lot down the straights.
Battle for 12th, Wyatt Brackett trying to hold off Daniel Holcroft, and Ray Rogers not able to, so he slides way up the track, losing a plethora of positions to Ray Rogers, Kevin Hurley. Garrett Brown goes by as well. So issues there, and now your battle here right around the top 10 continues to heat up. And remember, guys, there are stage points in this late in the year for those drivers on the cut line. Like you mentioned, Michael, you want to get up here before lap 20 and get yourself some bonus points.
Yeah, it's going to be a really crucial thing, as we talked about, with the likes of Holcroft, who's up here in 12th spot right now. He's in a really good spot now. He's a little bit further back on the cut than what he'd like to be, but I mean, he's searching right there. He's right on the cut, and he's got a few drivers he needs to get through to get up to the front for that top 10 spot. So it's going to be crucial for his playoff hopes to get away a few stage points here to secure his chances. But these guys are up here, especially in the top 10 cut, are really close to the battle here. Look at like Alex Muscarella in the 07, the 95 Bedwell. Bedwell's been consistent on that back bumper of Muscarella. Looking around the drafting, he's got a little bit of side draft, looking to peeking on the left rear quarter panel to see if he can pull him back a little bit. The side draft is effective on these long straights and can play a real crucial part to making your passes here at Pocono.
A couple drivers who have done oh so well this year. Warren Kyle Keith, who for the past 2 months in a row has been on the podium and coming off the win at Circuit of the Americas right now. Around the rear bumper of Ryan Thomas, another driver who not necessarily has won 4 races. He's been in victory lane multiple times, but Thomas has been a front runner at a lot of the intermediates, a lot of the 1 mile tracks like Dover and Phoenix. These are paired drivers you expect to do extremely well once playoff time rolls around here in just a couple of weeks.
Yeah, Ryan Thomas was a driver that not only does well on every track so far this season, but did well right here at this very venue last season. We had a longer race, 100 laps, and Ryan Thomas did not win the race, but finished second and led a good amount of laps to his credit. So if anything, Ryan Thomas knows what it's like to perform well at this track at Pocono Raceway, and he's certainly doing a well job of fighting off Warren Keith. You saw him use the high line to get some of that momentum off, and now just slowly pulling away and just hoping that Alexander Muscarella gets in the clutches of that E8B in a battle within itself. So Thomas at least knows a thing or two about doing well. However, it's a longer race last season. It was a shorter race this season. He may be having a test of patience just a little bit. He's trying to catch the cars ahead.
Too wide into the tunnel turn doesn't work out well for 15th position Garrett Brown, the inaugural MPI Cup Series champion. Now he's in the grasp of Justin Winters in the number 52 machine. Back here also just behind these drivers is Dakota Curtis, so a few drivers still working their way through the field as Curtis tries to get a little bit momentum on the inside of 3, but can't get enough to catch up to the 52 of Winters. Holcroft, though, still just at the very front of this small little group here and will be under attack shortly now as the 52 goes to the inside of Brown.
Yep, that draft played a crucial part there on the 52's end where he got to the inside of that 21, and he was able to use advantage of that draft and take that pass into 1. He also used that momentum he had through turns 1 and down into the inside of the 31 of Holcroft to take that spot. So now move him up to the 14th spot, does Justin Winters. And Holcroft's now got to fend off from Curtis and a slew of other drivers behind him using the very outside of turn 2. That's a very tough place to be on, especially when you're out there on the tunnel turn, the way that speed is carried through there. So he's going to lose out another spot to the 8 machine of Adam Lancaster. Now he's under fire from Garrett Brown and the 44 Ray Richer as they work their way through 3.
Losing a plethora of positions here. Now under attack from Ray Richard, the 47-year-old out of Mohawk, New York for Abruzzi Racing. Been on iRacing for about 4.5 years. Also a track announcer at some local tracks as well. But his sights right now looking to cut down that 17-point gap between him and Brian Fine on the cut line for the playoffs. And this is one of those drivers. Don't get in his way because every single position and every single point matters for the 44.
And that comes here, Devin, when you're so close to these playoffs. Even guys like Ray Richer, even guys like Kevin Rockwell, just only 1 point out of playoff competition, they are using that desperation. That's starting to kick in now as the races start to dwindle in, especially for guys like Richard. But at least on the positive note, we saw Kevin Rockwell perform a masterful points comeback at Atlanta a couple weeks back and pretty much immediately dropped a almost 20+ point gap, almost to just about less than 10 points. So he's done a good job of doing that, and that means that every single race matters, every stage matters, and of course the length of these races can be good for Ray Richer to gain these spots. He's been on the upswing ever since he started on the grid. He's currently trying to ride 17th where Garrett Brown is, but at least for the Abruzzi Racing driver, he's done fairly well for himself with a couple good finishes this year, trying to do the same here tonight.
Battle for 4th, John Kinder starting to catch up to Austin Shoemaker. Was on the rear bumper using the draft down the front straightaway. Now moving through the tunnel turn. That 12 machine has had plenty of speed for Black Car Mafia. Meanwhile, Austin Shoemaker, the 26-year-old out of Missouri, he's certainly been improving as the season has gone on. Prestige Worldwide Racing as a team has had some struggle races, but right now doing extremely well. And now just behind them looking to make a move on John Kinder is Richard Swavely, who has put together a good string of finishes. Now here comes Ryan Thomas, a bit of a hornet's nest here just outside the top 5.
Yep, Thomas has a little bit of damage on that right front fender after smacking the wall, but he's able to keep that speed up, and he's got the inside line, the preferred line into turn 1. He has to take advantage of Swavely as Swavely rides that third lane there. He's going to have to settle in front of the 88 machine of Warren Keith, so he'll find himself sitting in 7th for the time being. But back up front, we had a lead change last time by. The 51 of Zach Wilson brought Harlow with him as well, and they were both able to get around Justin Gaines, so once again, Gain is starting to fall back here on the longer runs. He's got a little bit of right front damage to that machine. So once again, these guys are starting to get into it where they're pushing the corner exits just a little bit extra, and they're pushing their cars just a little bit too much, and their luck as well, getting the right front damage on the vehicle, slowing themselves down. But Harlow's been able to stick to the bumper of Wilson, who's been really competitive as of late. The likes of Atlanta, Coda as well. He was very competitive across those last few races, and he's really showing his speed here right before the playoffs start.
Yeah, and the big difference between Harlow and Wilson is the fact that Wilson ran into some troubles in that Pete Mobile at Circuit of the Americas. Meanwhile, Ross Harlow was able to put together a very strong race at Circuit of the Americas. And Harlow ends up coming home in P2 for Blue Line Racing. And the Mercedes AMG technician here looking to put together another good string of races here behind his teammate Zach Wilson.
Yeah, just trying to catch up right now. And Roswell Harlow has had some struggles this year, but has also had some very high notes. I mean, mentioning tracks like Charlotte, where he put on a dominating performance to open the race. Unfortunately, didn't go well for him later on. However, just trying to continue his way through. You see a very good run out of turn 3 using that yellow line to his advantage. We may have a battle for the lead again, guys, coming up in the next couple laps. Remember, we're closing in on the end of stage 1, so sooner than later, we're going to have ourselves under our first caution, not by a crash. So this will be very big if Roswell Harlow can get around the Second Keith Motorsports driver Zach Wilson, especially in the final laps of this stage, get some extra points.
13 laps down, 7 to go in stage number 1 here in the tricky triangle 225. And as these guys continue to battle, you see drivers fan out between turns 1 and 2. The number 97 of Kevin Hurley hoping to make a move on Christopher Bedwell, the final spot in the top 10 that will award stage points to these drivers. So still playing a fight for here in these closing laps.
Yep, this battle has been intensifying the past few laps or so. Muscarella's had the spot, and Bedwell's been able to stick that rear bumper for most of stage 1, but he just hasn't found a way to get around him. He's using that lower line, getting the cut below Muscarella, and he's got a nice little run coming out of turn 3 now. Maybe that help with Hurley behind is giving us a nice little arrow push to go down the straightaway. He's going to get that momentum. He can pull alongside the 07 of Muscarella, and Hurley doesn't know which way to go. It peeks out to the 07 for just a second. He's a fall in behind the 95, and these guys will be side by side through turn 1. And I think the preferred line goes to the 95 there, and he's going to have the momentum off the corner to get the spot away.
Slides on up off the corner. Now peeking into this picture as well is the 18 of Ray Rogers, the defending series champion. Now Hurley peeks out again, looking to the inside of Alex Muscarella. Takes it into the tunnel turn, and Ray Rogers looks to follow here.
And I'm surprised that we're seeing this here, guys, that when some drivers go at attack from others, especially when they're under you, it pretty much results in a freight train. They have a couple drivers in line that end up finding their way to the inside, and then all of a sudden the driver up top does not have a run. They end up losing all those spots. That's exactly what happened to the 07 Muscarella there. We saw it happen with Daniel Holdcroft not too long ago. I'm starting to think this is looking like a short track. He's in that inside line, being the predominant way around, and if you're stuck on the high side, you don't really have much to go for. There's a little bit of a battle behind them between the Black Car Mafia driver, Justin Winters, and Zachary Taylor. Also to note, Zachary Taylor has some damage on the rear end. Not exactly sure how he picked it up, but again, like you guys say, any bit of damage does really big detriments here at a track like Pocono.
Yeah, a little bit of trouble there for Taylor. Michael, can you kind of expand a little bit more on how much the draft in the aero is important? Obviously, these cup cars basically depend on aero, but the tricky triangle, not necessarily a place that you always think about it because of the low banking.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those places where there's such long straightaways. You're at such a high speed with the aero package you have here, where you're pretty much wide open for 95% of the lap. It's really important when it comes down to it to make sure that you have that draft. And I mean, it's huge when it comes to lap time. I mean, the difference between having draft and not having draft is half a second to multiple attempts more than that. So I mean, it's just really important to make sure you have that drafting help, and it's really crucial, especially when you get down the stage 3 for green flag pit stops, because whenever you have that drafting partner with you and you pit with somebody, there's someone in front of you about 2 seconds up, you can catch those guys easily when it comes down to it. You see the draft being in effect here. Richard's still closing in on the back bumper of Dakota Curtis on your screen right here, but it's just one of those things where draft is going to be really important. And we have a developing story here with Warren Kyle Keith. He's had some technical issues, and he's now behind the wall. So Warren Kyle Keith is in a little bit of an issue here on track.
Yeah, technical issues for Warren Kyle Keith, who has finished on the podium for every points-paying race since February 14th when he won at Charlotte. Was hoping to keep that streak alive, but he'll be moving multiple laps down as he will check his computer's connection to the servers as Justin Winters takes a peek here. And another battle this here is around the top 10 between Ray Rogers, Justin Winters, and Alex Muscarella.
Yeah, these three have been in line a couple laps throughout, and they're just trying to catch up to Christopher Bedwell, who's doing surprisingly well. It's his first start in this series along with Adam Lancaster. They're both making their first starts in the MPI Cup Series tonight, so good to see them already performing fairly well and competing with some of the best in this series. Rogers able to slip by for position around that lane. You see where Justin Winters sits just a little bit behind there. And here's now the battle for that current 9th position, just inside of the top 10 for stage points. We're about 2 laps here. Look who's up there in 6th place, falling off. That's the former race leader and pole sitter, Justin Gann. That car has not been good on this long run, and it continues to fall out. We'll see if it ends up behind the top 10 when we close this stage.
And we saw this at Atlanta, unfortunately, for Justin Gann. Had the speed early on, but basically blowing out the right front tire, and he is just holding on for dear life with 2 laps to go in the stage to get those bonus points. First under attack from Richard Swavely. His teammate Kevin Hurley will follow behind. Then Ray Rogers and Christopher Bedwell all right here together. So bad can become worse here for the 30 real quick.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to have Q speed and have short run speed, but when it comes down to forget, if he wants to be competitive, he wants to hold on to that long run speed when it comes down to it. But Swavely had a moment there on the corner coming out of turn 2 that time by. He lost out the spot to Hurley, and now he's under fire from the 18 machine to Rogers. Those guys are side by side coming through turn 3. Swavely's getting pitched down to that bottom lane. Now it's the question of where does the 95 of Bed go? I mean, does he go high to go with Rogers? Yes, he does. He's going to follow through that way, and Bedwell's going to go with him, go to the outside of Swavely, peeking to the outside on the final lap of stage 1, and Bedwell's going to have to back out going through turn 1, but Gann can hold on here. He's got those 4 guys queuing up behind him, but back out front, it's all Zach Wilson up front.
Hurley lurking behind Gann. Hurley's the 2nd largest mover of the race. He's up 10 spots from 17th to 7th, looking for bonus points. But the guy who will be picking up a playoff point is going to be Zach Wilson. Took the lead about midway through the stage and has held off Ross Harlow throughout the rest of the way. Coming down into turn number 3, the 25-year-old police officer out of Boone, North Carolina, the owner of Blue Lion Racing, but the driver for Sega Keith Motorsports off of turn 3, picks up the stage number 1 victory. The 51 with a great showing again here, a few weeks in a row now for Zach Wilson. Ross Harlow, Austin Shoemaker, John Kinder, and Ryan Thomas round out your top 5. Justin Gann, Kevin Hurley, Ray Rogers, Christopher Bedwell, and Richard Swavely will all get some points here in stage number 1. Thus far, we've seen drivers with tire fall off, drivers go through the field, but who will get the best of the Tricky Triangle here in the Tricky Triangle 225? Stage number 2 coming up next live on Podium Esports for the MPI Cup Series.
Hi everyone, I'm Max Papis, founder of MPI. Let me introduce you to a line that we developed in MPI that is really dear to me. The MPI SimMax. Obviously, SimMax, the guy here. The reason of birth of SimMax is the fact that nowadays I believe that sim racing and virtual racing is exactly the platform to start. I consider sim racing and virtual racing very similar to the experience I had in go-kart when I started in my racing. And let me introduce you to our line of authentic steering wheel created specifically for the sim community.
They say that perfection doesn't exist in this game. Most players just don't have it in them. But those who dare to seek it might catch excellence. And that sounds perfect to me. So, I'm done playing. Let's drive.
Pit stops underway for the Tricky Triangle 225 for the MPI Cup Series. Zach Wilson leading the field down pit road. Guys, can you do anything tricky on pit road right now? We talked about some strategy earlier. What can you do here to gain some track position either now or in the next 10 laps?
Right now, you're just going to go 4 tires and fuel. That's going to be the consensus here. And we had an information by the league owners themselves a little bit earlier that they were going to adjust the stages accordingly so that there wouldn't be some significant fuel issues coming to stage 2. I did see, though, Adam Lancaster make a daring move out of pit road. So I guess for everybody else, it was 4 tires and fuel. But for Adam Lancaster, it was an entirely different call to put him in the lead.
You know, it looks like, at least on my timing and scoring, Lancaster might have missed his pit stall, as I don't believe he actually went into his box. I was about to say, well, Kenneth, it looks like someone disagrees with you, but it actually looks like the number 8 machine just missed his pit stall and came off of pit road. So I think you're going to have to pit for fuel here, only 75% fuel capacity.
Yeah, definitely have to come down one more time for sure. So he's going to have to make his way back down again. That's the good thing he came down then, because the pits would have closed this time by if he had not come down for him. So he's have to come down and refuel that number 8 Camaro ZL1. But there's a few drivers that were up front at the start of this race who were electing to take some damage repairs here. The 38 Justin Gann just came out the pit road. The 07 of Muscarella, the 99 of Zachary Taylor. All these drivers running inside the top 10, top 15 are electing to take some damage repairs to get that arrow the way they want it to. So these guys are going to be on the back foot when it comes to the start of stage 2, but to see how they're going to weave their way through the rest of the field and get back to their original spots. As you see the 8 finally making his way back down the pit lane.
Unfortunate stage break there for Adam Lancaster, who ran so well in the top 15 for all of that stage, but will now have to come down on pit road. For almost 5 years, iWraps has been home to the best quality digital wraps for your cars on iRacing, and now iWraps has launched iWraps.shop, an all-new website where you can get high-quality wraps, change their colors, add your logos, and be racing in no time. Prices start as low as $10 per wrap, so go ahead and visit iWraps.shop today to purchase your next iRacing wrap. iWraps, look good, going fast. Speaking of going fast, how about a little bit of move by Ray Rogers? He's moved himself into the top 5 from moves on pit road. Who are you guys watching here for stage number 2?
I think if there's one driver, Devin, I'm going to look at. I know Ray Rogers is a key example of just long run speed, and he's also done great on the long runs, but I'm going to look at John Kinder. Fantastic pit stop to put him second on the outside of run number 1. Now, this may be daring here since he may have the unoptimal line here coming into turn 1. However, it definitely could pose well if he's able to time his restart right, clear himself to second, and have that inside lane to turn 1. So I think if there's anyone to watch for, it'll be John Kinder on the outside of run 1.
Yeah, I'm thinking I have to watch Shoemaker back in 3rd. I mean, he qualified up front at the very start of this race. He's been in the top 3 for most of the time in stage 1. You see if to translate that speed to stage 2. And at the end of stage 1, before we had that caution come out for the stage break, he was one of the fastest cars on track by a good 10th or so. So if he can translate that long run speed into this stage, he might have a shot here at the stage win in stage 2.
Zach Wilson to bring the field back to green. His first stage point of the year coming in stage number 1. Still looking for that almighty victory to lock him into the playoffs. Start on the front row and brings the field back to green here. Let's go ahead and listen to the Sim Max sounds of the sim. Ray Richer has the pressure on him coming into tonight. 17 points behind the cutoff line for the playoffs, and he has been driving like it, moving himself into the top 10. Richard just behind Dakota Curtis and Kevin Hurley, trying to hold off a hornet's nest filled with Brian Fine, Garrett Brown. How about Daniel Michel coming into the conversation?
Yeah, a handful of drivers starting to find their way into the top 10. You mentioned 8 points, or 8 spots rather, on the net gain for Ray Richer, but he is right in front of one of the drivers who's right at the cutoff by 1 point to Kevin Rockwell, the 98 of Brian Fine. This is a very close points battle, and this, even in a larger perspective, could mean a lot coming to the next race in Indianapolis, considering where they're running right now. Up front, though, I talked about John Kinder, how dangerous he could be. He's currently riding second, but still falling a little bit short of your race leader as you ride on board with Fine.
And a battle for the 4th position. Austin Shoemaker side by side with Ray Rogers for that 4th position. And Christopher Bedwell not far behind them. 3-way battle here for P4.
Yeah, Shoemaker had a little bit of a tough run going through turn 1 as he got passed there by the 18 of Ray Rogers, but was able to settle in behind him. But that 95's put on a show so far in his debut here in the MPI Cup Series. He's holding strong right here in 6 spots, just had the 52 and the 97 of Hurley and Winters. Those guys are side by side through the tunnel turn. And the 52 just got choked up on the inside lane. The 97 utilized that middle lane very nicely through the center of the corner. And Hurley now up into that 7th spot.
And Kenneth, a guy who started on pole, led a lot of laps early but fell off quick. Justin Gann all the way back here in 27th.
Yeah, he's very far back in this field. A handful of drivers got put in this situation, and I'm not sure how Gann might have found himself here. It had to have been down that pit road stop because he was in 6th when we crossed the start-finish line to conclude stage number 1. A lot of other drivers that were in the same sort of situation include Zachary Taylor, who was trying to get that rear end damage repaired, and the 07 of Alex Muscarella. So although these drivers had strong runs open to early this race, a lengthy stop down pit road has put them way back in this field, and especially with the lack of incidents we've had here tonight, Devin, it's going to be even tougher for them to really climb themselves back up the running order, as you see Sean Kalis to the inside of, I believe that's the 10 of White Bracket.
This time by 16 laps remaining in stage 2, and a lot of cars having to deal with some damage repair. And I, for one, am in no seat to critique anyone's driving or strategy, so I'm going to hand that over to the former eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series competitor, Michael Guerrilla. A lot of guys experimenting here in turns 1 and 2. I'm not sure about this.
Yeah, it's very different. I mean, obviously we know there's been changes to the track dynamics as we've talked about it. And there's been viable lanes across the board when it comes to these different tracks. We've seen like the likes of Auto Club, Atlanta, and all different tracks in the MPI Cup Series. But when it comes down to turn 1, there's just no middle lane, no high lane as of right now. These guys are searching up there looking for something to utilize it, and it's just not working out for them. These guys are losing time when it comes down through it. Usually through turn 2, it's always the preferred line is that middle line on the bottom side coming through turn 2 just to keep the speed up. In turn 3, it's kind of a crapshoot down there. That's where it's the most viable, that outside lane, is so that way you get that run off the corners. You see these guys coming through there right now. I mean, most of them are running that bottom side, but if you can pinch somebody, you have our caution on the speedway.
Justin Gann, Richard Swavely will be a part of this, but it all started going into turn number 3. And I believe it might have been a Blue Line Racing driver who gets the first little bit of issues here, and it was Richard Swavely with problems going into 3.
Yeah, him and Alex Muscarella. You see Muscarella just up the road without a front clip. Just talked about handful of drivers, including Swavely, they got mired back with damage repair and got put in the hornet's nest on the field. And this, unfortunately, is going to put Richard Swavely in a very tough spot in our first incident of the day. We'll try to see what happened here.
Yeah, first caution for incident. Michael, just a little bit of a tap from Holdcroft there, sends the 9 into the wall. And a few other drivers are going to have some bad luck through this one.
Yeah, I'm looking back at it on entry. I think in a second look to see what happened with the 31. I mean, obviously these two are racing side by side, coming to the short shoot, coming down into 3, as we saw in the replay the first time by. But it looks like it's just a little bit of a miscommunication on the 31's part. I mean, he's obviously lined up behind him entering turn 3, and he just shoots it in there a lot deeper than what the 9 of Swavely was. And as soon as you try to counter steer, that thing gripped up immediately. The 30 of Gann had nowhere to go, along with the 07 of Muscarella. They were as innocent bystanders as the 9 bounced back in front of traffic. But yeah, just a little bit of miscommunication there. Just a little bit out of place on the dive right there by the 31.
And around them, a little bit of evasive action we saw on board here with Holcroft. Listen in. Almost felt like an open wheel car, just kind of hopped up on that left rear tire there.
Yeah, just that slight contact sends the 9 of Swavely into peril there. And just at that point, you're trying to save the race car, but you don't have a lot of banking to help you. Remember, it's a short banked area around turn 3 as you run on board with Justin Gann. He goes right into this incident head on pretty much as he's battling with the 43 of Sean Kalis. You'll see it up the road here. The 9 gets that little tap, and he overcorrects, goes straight up to the outside wall. And by this point, you see the contact right there and a big hit to the 30 Justin Gann. We're already talking about his early issues, and this further sets his night into a deeper hole than it already was.
And you can certainly feel that in the wheel when it happens. And I believe even Brian Fine might have got a little bit of contact on the front end, and these Cup cars hate getting touched on the front part of these bumpers. Not just the aero damage, Michael, but it's so easy to plug up something like the radiator or the air holes in these cars. And if you don't fix it properly, it easily makes these engines overheat.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, when it comes down to it, even like the slightest bump on a restart where it crinkles the front end can overheat the motor, just because of the fact that we're so wide open. The motor never really gets a break except for maybe turns 1 and 3 for the most part. But yeah, it comes down to it where even the slightest bit of damage on any part of that front end of the front clip can affect the performance of your vehicle. And I think it's kind of funny, the fact that all those 3 drivers that we talked about who went to the back to save their damage repairs at the start of the race that they needed to take care of, the 07 of Muscarella, the 9 of Swavely, and the 30 of Gann, all swept up in that wreck right there. But the beneficiary of this caution has got to be Warren Kyle Keith, getting another lap back.
And now will we have any takers on pit road for some strategy play? A couple guys think about it. Maybe some guys further in the back will think about coming in. Again, only 4 extra sets of tires, 75% fuel load. And it looks like no takers to try to mix up strategy play here whatsoever. And of course, guys, for everyone who was caught up in that incident, the most important part of this series, no fast repairs.
Yeah, there's no fast repairs. So for those guys who had those incidents like Richard Swavely with that engine and the damage that he picked up from it on the front end, that is going to be very rough for him. He's going to have a lot of time to spend on pit road. But guys, that's going to be the first drivers that really go a lap down for incident in this race. We've had all 37 cars clean up until this point, other than Warren Kyle Keith, who had gone about 2 laps down due to his connection issues. But apart from that, we had everybody in this race clean and green on the track. This is the first time we're going to see a handful of drivers taken out. Unfortunately, it's some of the stronger ones we saw earlier in this race, and even some from the Blue Line Racing Sega Keith Motorsports camp, and that's really not going to be good news for them. Fortunately for the 51 team, on that team for Sega Keith Motorsports, they have a driver up front, so at least that's the good news to try to grab them a win. And Zach Wilson, one of those drivers who's yet to capture a win this season, still looking for his first.
8 laps remaining in stage number 2. When we go back green, Zach Wilson and John Kinder will lead the field, followed by Ryan Thomas, Ray Rogers, and Kevin Hurley, your top 5. Christopher Bedwell keeping a strong run going in 6, followed by Justin Winters, Austin Shoemaker, Daniel Michel, and Dakota Curtis, your top 10, as we get ready to go back green for the Tricky Triangle 225 for the MPI Cup Series. We are going to find out exactly who will have the long-term run here as we get ready to go back green. First time that we will have cold tires and not fresh tires on the rear wheels here for everybody. Zach Wilson in the white 51 on the inside, John Kinder on the outside. Great jump by Wilson to get back green.
It was a really good jump there by Wilson, who was in a really small restart box here at Pocono. It's very immediate. As soon as that pace car dips, usually more likely than not the leader goes. But Wilson gets off to a good jump here. Now it's brought Ryan Thomas down to the inside of Kinder through turns 1, and you see if that sticks on the bottom lane there as Kinder washes up on exit. These guys are still side by side coming down Long Pond Straight.
Thomas door to door with John Kinder for P2. I can't do math, even though I brought up Pythagorean's theorem to open up the show. We will have 11 laps to go when we come to the line this time. And Wilson once again adding up to his lead as the Hornets nest continues to pile around him. Kevin Hurley looking to the inside of Ray Rogers. This is for 4th into turn 3.
And these were a handful of drivers that got better starts than John Kinder. Talked about Ryan Thomas, who looked to the inside for just a moment, was able to get that run off. And now Christopher Bedwell looks to the inside of Ray Rogers for that 5th spot. They're still holding on to the outside, having that run. Look at the snake trail up ahead the road. The leader and 2nd place John Kinder swerving all the way down the front straightaway. Here's Ryan Thomas now trying to catch up the back bumper. And Ray Rogers back to the inside of Kevin Hurley for top 4.
Hurley pushing way up the track. On board here with the defending series champion, Ray Rogers, in the number 18 machine. Been one of the most successful drivers before last week's race at Circuit of the Americas. Had the points lead when it came to playoff points, but that got taken over by Warren Kyle Keith. Nonetheless, though, some spectacular wins this year for Ray Rogers at different disciplines of tracks, if you will. The first one for Ray Rogers coming at Homestead, Miami, then Auto Club, then Dover. A 1 mile, a 1.5 mile, and a 2 mile so far this year for Ray Rogers. Would like to make it a 2.5 mile to add on there tonight.
Yeah, he's looking to do that tonight. He's definitely on the right foot today, up to the 4th spot after starting 15th. And he's starting to pull away from this battle that's just behind him with Bedwell, Winters, Hurley. These guys still duking it out here for some valuable stage points here in just a few laps. But the 95 of Bedwell still once again putting on a show for his opening day here at the MPI Cup Series, and his speed's been really good so far. And he's also bringing along the 52 of Winters. Winters has shown flashes of speed as well, like at the likes of Atlanta, where he was very competitive there until he had a late incident that took him out of contention. So it's good to see him up in the top 5. As there's one car that going through turn 2 that washed way up the racetrack. That's the 25 of Michel. Michel went very wide going through turn 2 that last time by, and then opens the door up for Dakota Curtis. Dakota's finally cracked the top 10 now. He's looking for some stage points as he nails the flat right there, and he's going to lose some spots there, and he's going to hold on to what he's got ahead of Shoemaker.
Right now just holding up Shoemaker. Ray Richer on the inside. We've already mentioned multiple times how he is in that playoff hunt right now to get above the cut line. Right behind him, though, is Brian Fine, who is making some headway way up on the high side of the track last time around the circuit. Made up 2 spots with that line, and now it's closing in on the battle for 10th. And Brian Fine is the driver just above the cut line. Came into today with a 17-point lead over Richer. And for Richer, Fine's the guy who you have to beat for these next 3 weeks.
Yeah, but you have a cushion here if you're Brian Fine to compare to the 44. So at this point, riding in the top 12, this is good news if you're the 98s. Keep walking these positions, continue to make up ground, and at this point, you'll build that buffer even by just a little bit. And staying even here with Richer, even still, compares and makes sure that the amount of points that Richer gains isn't as much. You can gain about 1 or 2 points here in this scenario. But what I'm noticing here, guys, is that as soon as everybody goes too wide, somebody goes in a battle for position, there's always a trail of cars that just start to gain ground, start to come into picture, and they start to pounce wherever they can. As you ride on board right now with the 85 of Judd Danielson for Bootsy Racing. He's under the 98 as well. So another pass being made. Everybody's on the hunt for positions tonight.
Yeah, you know, Kenneth, this is just one of the variable factors when it comes to Pocono. That we talked about the draft being so effective. That's what keeps people on top of each other. You see this battle pack just behind the Brian Fine, the 98 machine with Shoemaker and Harlow. These guys, as soon as you mentioned one person loses that draft, go up to that high side, those guys who are on the bottom line using that draft to move up on each other, use that for the track position purposes. It allows them to get alongside you and take advantage of that, and it allows them to bring other cars with them as well. Like the look you see right here, Harlow's going down to that inside. He might bring the 28 of Justin Henry with him as well. That 28 Doritos machine peaks down to the inside for just a second there, but Harlow still down to the bottom side, and there goes the 4 up the track, and here comes everybody else swarming to that bottom line to get around him.
And Hendry, another guy fighting for points today. He came into tonight only 9 points above the cut line, and so that blue number 28, he's looking for points as well. And how about Dustin Reeves entering the conversation in the white number 6 machine? While the front pack is kind of separated out, these guys are really starting to come together. And speaking of come together, John Kinder is beginning to lasso up and reel in Zach Wilson.
And that Black Car Mafia machine has been faster. Remember that last time by, they were equal on time. 54.365 for both the leader and second place Kinder. That time by, Kinder now just a little bit faster, about a tenth faster than Zach Wilson. So he has been closing in this gap. And this, guys, will be one of the first times you see drivers battle for position. Now here comes Kinder with a nose to the inside, trying to make the move. It won't stick out of the banking in turn 1. And in turn, this is going to allow for Ray Rogers and Christopher Bedwell to start coming into this fight. This is not good news if you're Zach Wilson being preyed on right now.
Kinder just taking a peek, looking around, but you don't want to look in that rear window because you have the 18 sneaking on up. I think I've seen an 18 car like that driven by Ray Rogers sneak up on guys at a track like Auto Club, and it didn't work out well for the guys in front. They ended up losing their positions.
Yeah, we definitely did see that same song, same dance, but we'll have to see if it plays out here at the end of stage 2. We have a caution on the speedway, a little bit further back in our pack. Have to see what caused the issue there. But looks like the 24 Kip Easley has lost his front end, and there's also the likes of the 99 is Zachary Taylor as well, as you see on your screen. Taylor's involved in the incident, so we'll have to see what happened to him as it came through turn 2 that last time by, bringing out the caution. Looks though he's coming to the corner, just smacks the outside wall, and he saves it miraculously off the wall, but he comes down to a slow spot, and he gets clipped hard by the 24 Kip Easley. He came back down the track in front of him, and that's going to bring out the caution and a lot of damage for the 99 and 24. The 24 on the cutoff.
Yeah, that's a major issue for Easley, who came in 14 points below the cut line. Zachary Taylor won the season opener at Las Vegas, locked into the playoffs. But these are some mighty big consequences here. Or excuse me, the 99 actually. He won the season opener, but has ran out of eligible races, so he's actually not playoff eligible at all. But for Easley, if this ruins your night, this is going to bring you a mighty fine gap below the cut line.
Yeah, you see the contact right there. A big hit to the 99. And with the smoke density that iRacing added in the recent update, it's a lot harder to see where drivers are crashing in front of you. So for Easley, it's about a guessing game, seeing where Taylor is. And by the time he finds out, it's way too late. And we spent a lot of time, guys, talking about Justin Hendry, Brian Fine, Kevin Rockwell, and obviously guys like, you know, these people that are right on the cut line here, especially in the point standings. This is not going to be good for that 24 of Easley being involved in an incident, 14 points out. With the way the other competitors have been running here tonight, it's going to be very big. Here's a call, though, at this point. A lot of other drivers down pit road, including the race leader, and a lot of other drivers on the lead lap. This is going to be the consensus call to close this stage.
A lot of cars making the trip down to pit road. And this is the decision here where maybe you don't end up pitting at the stage break. Everyone will go for everything that they have here.
Yeah, it's going to be an ultimate decision of what you want to do here with this short little shootout at the end of stage 2 here with the likes of the one machine there, as you see on your screen. That's going to be the Mike Thomas machine. He's going to stay on the racetrack for the time being. You'll have to see if he decides to come back down to the pit lane with the green white checker is going to be coming up here for the end of the stage. So it'll be interesting to see if that plays out. But everyone else, 4 tires and fuel down on pit lane for the most part. Wilson, Kinder, Rogers, Bedwell, and Thomas, your top 5 coming out the pit lane. So I don't know if this one car is going to stay out to the end of the stage or not, but it's going to be interesting to see how he's going to see if he can play for some stage points here at the end of stage 2.
We will find out. Might be a mighty large risk here, looking for some stage points potentially. But since basically everybody else pitted, he's going to have to come out when the caution returns in just a handful of laps. It looks like we will be having a green and white checkered coming on up. So we'll see here for the end of stage number 2 what the one car will decide to do moving forward. Well, if your business is interested in partnering with Podium Esports, we have plenty of space available for, that's right, you. Podium Esports has a plan for every budget and can custom tailor solutions to best suit your needs. For more information on the wide variety of partnership opportunities, send an email to admin@podiumesports.com. Hey, no obligation, man. You can just send an email. Just ask a question. That's all you need to do. We love to work with you guys, especially a number of individuals who've been great partners here with Podium Esports through the past couple of years, whether it be for the Podium 500 or for other types of events that we've had. And of course, all 3 of us in some way, shape, or form were part of Podium's first real-life broadcast at GoPro Motorplex this past week.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. You and I were right in the booth. I think Michael was right there at the GoPro Motorplex himself, having a little bit of fun with some of the Monday Night Racing camp. But Our focus stretches back here, and Mike Thomas, this is a very interesting call here. I believe he's going to go straight to pit road once the actual stage is called, but for now he's going to use this attempt to get that track position and hopefully hold on. The biggest issue there, though, is he's on the oldest tires of the field, so it's going to be more about whether he's able to fend off the rest of the field trying to swallow him up, or whether he can just hold on, brace for impact, and at least stay where he's at, maybe get some stage points out of this. So it's sort of a risky move here by Thomas on the oldest tires, but if it means some points at the end of the day, then it definitely doesn't harm too much at the end.
Mike Thomas is playoff eligible. He is 33rd right now in the overall points. He will lead the field to green. The only car not on fresh tires, Zach Wilson, who has led the majority of this race, will restart to the outside of him. John Kinder will be stuck second row inside with Ray Rogers in fourth. Christopher Bedwell and Ryan Thomas make up row 3. Justin Winters, Daniel Michel in row number 4. Dakota Curtis, Austin Shoemaker round out your top 10 with a couple of Abruzzi Racing drivers, Ray Richer and Judd Danielson in row number 6. How will the fresh tires fare for everybody except for the Pennzoil number 1 machine of Mike Thomas? Number 1, you can't spin the tires here down the drafty front straightaway and high-speed front straight. Thomas and Wilson lead the field off of turn number 3. Green flag is out, and the 51, I think, got a jump just because of those fresh rubbers on the rear tires.
Yeah, I think the one machine slid them just a little bit on the restart, spun them up a little bit on that one machine, but he's holding on strong so far in the turn. Let's see how he fares going off in the turn 1 and 2, see if he gets swallowed up. He's pushing up way up the track there, and Kinder's going to get pushed up high along with that as well. So now Mike Thomas is still holding strong in second, but for how long we're able to keep on is now Zach Wilson's trying to pull away with 2 laps to go in the stage.
Here comes Christopher Bedwell, gets blocked by John Kinder coming into the tunnel turn. They stuff Mike Thomas up the track. He doesn't get hit, he just has to flush all the way out there, and he's going to lose a plethora of positions.
And there was one driver who had to save his race car. A bit of smoke in the midst of the field. But right now, look at Kinder still looking to the inside. Thomas pretty much seceding all sorts of position. And Zach Wilson right now running away with this race lead. It's going to be about everybody else, though, behind Devin in terms of these points, because these may be big points for some of the playoff eligible drivers. And, of course, even drivers still fighting for reign in the playoffs. As the white flag in the stage, Wilson now up by just about a second in turn 1.
Final lap in stage number 2. Mike Thomas, is now fallen outside of the top 10, losing that to the pair of Shoemakers and now Dakota Curtis. Meanwhile, it's a hornet's nest for some extra bonus points in this stage. Ray Rogers just trying to hold on to the second position. John Kinder hounding the rear bumper, now taking a look for the spot.
Yeah, Kinder was trying to push him away right there off turns number 2. And there goes the one of Rogers in the wall. There's spinning at the back. There's a lot of carnage at the back of the field coming off turn 2. There's a lot of cars involved. There's one car on the inside wall, one car flipping. The 85 of Danielson's involved. I think this all stemmed from the one machine hitting the wall off turn 2 that last time by. And the 48 of Progar is involved as well. The 10 of David Brackett. Multiple drivers involved in this to end the stage 2. But your stage 2 win goes to Zach Wilson, the 51 machine.
Yes, that caution will indeed conclude the second stage, brought to you by Icon Race Graphics. We'll take a look back here, what brings out the caution flag to conclude this stage.
This is around where Chris Progar is. You see him just up ahead the road, the 85. There's the 10 of Wyatt Brackett, Bill Schoonover. This is the tunnel turn, and just diving it in, just trying to get that position. And what a good save, though, at that point. But then they reach contact once more. And then Wyatt Brackett, just a victim of the circumstances, goes upside down, tumbling, continues to flip over and over. And Danielson with a big amount of damage to his Chevrolet Camaro. We talked about him running in the top 15, having a good amount of run tonight at Pocono. And this pretty much leaves it to come to an end here right at the second stage. You see the big hit to the inside wall as he tags along the 10. And he goes riveting around. And luckily for Progar, he gets away mostly unscathed. But for the 85 that tried to make that move for position, it ultimately comes at his expense.
The end of stage 2, a little bit wacky and quite the roller coaster ride, especially for Wyatt Brackett. Just stuck along for the ride, and a nasty one it is. A wacky conclusion to stage number 2. We will bring you back the final half, the Tricky Triangle 225, coming on up for the MPI Cup Series live on Podium Esports.
Hi everyone, I'm Max Papis, founder of MPI. Let me introduce you to a line that we developed in MPI that is really dear to me. The MPI Sim Max. Obviously, Sim Max, the guy here. The reason of birth of Sim Max is the fact that nowadays I believe that sim racing and virtual racing is exactly the platform to start. I consider sim racing and virtual racing very similar to the experience I had in go-kart when I started in my racing. And let me introduce you to our line of authentic steering wheel created specifically for the sim community.
They say that perfection doesn't exist in this game. Most players just don't have it in them. But those who dare to seek it might catch excellence. And that sounds perfect to me. So, I'm done playing. Let's drive.
As we both cross the halfway point of tonight's race and prepare for the final stage of the Tricky Triangle 225, it's time to bring you the iRacing Midway Race Break, brought to you by iRacing. iRacing is the world's premier online racing game, putting you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport, virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in Australian supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the world of outlaws, and more. Zach Wilson has dominated thus far and will lead the field back to green for stage number 3. John Kinder will begin the stage in the second position with Ray Rogers in third. Christopher Bedwell starting things off in fourth, and Ryan Thomas in fifth. Justin Winters in P6, Daniel Michel up to P7, Austin Shoemaker 8th, Chris Shoemaker in 9th, Ray Richer rounding out your top 10.
Justin Hendry starts off the top 11 with Roswell Harlow behind him in 12th. Mark Dingman in his final race in this series will be 13th at the restart with Dustin Reeves 14th. Adam Lancaster in the 8 machine will be in the top 15, followed by David Brackett. 17th to Garrett Brown, 18th to Bill Schoonover. Stephen Ayers Jr. will be 19th, and rounding out your top 20 is the 31 of Daniel Holdcroft.
Looking back to 21st is Chris Progar, 22nd Kevin Rockwell, Warren Kyle Keith. We saw him have some issues earlier. He's back up to 23rd, back on the lead lap. James Kunkel, 24th. Brian Fine, 25th. Sean Kalis, 26th. Dakota Curtis, 27th. Kevin Hurley, 28th. Mike Thomas is now on some fresh tires back at 29th. And Travis Stevens outside the top 30.
Trouble has found the remaining drivers. Judd Danielson in 31st. Wyatt Brackett did just confirm in the driver's chat that he is okay, and that was one hell of a ride, he says. Zach Taylor in 33rd. Kip Easley, Alex Muscarella, Richard Swavely, and Justin Gann. Unfortunately, out of the race, rounding out your 37-car field. And back to green we go for the final stage of this race. It will be 42 laps to go, and Zach Wilson leading the field into turn number 1.
It was a quick start by Ray Rogers, though. He peeks to the inside, but not for long, or at least he was to the outside. John Kinder now takes it back for second, and it's going to be all about how they can catch up to race leader Zach Wilson. That last time by, they pretty much let him run away with the race lead, and John Kinder definitely does not want to see that. Here's another battle for the 4th spot. Christopher Bedwell under fire from Ryan Thomas. Justin Winters in the Black Car Mafia machine also trying to take a peek through the tunnel turn, but everybody's single file as they head back to turn 3.
Ray Richer now under attack for 10th. It's Ross Harlow going door to door into the tunnel turn. Richer gets a little bit loose and will lose the 10th position. Now Justin Hendry will enter the conversation. Richer and Hendry, both drivers racing right around the cut line for the playoffs with 3 races to go, including tonight.
Yeah, these two are having to put some solid performances together. Doing like they are right now is going to be very important to their way into the round of 16 when it comes time to the playoffs here in a couple weeks' time. But right in front of them, Harlow gets a little bit high up off the corner. Harlow's to lose up to that spot there to the 44, Ray Richer. Richard was able to take advantage of Harlan making an issue through turn 1 there, and he's able to get that 10th spot back away. And Henry might be looking to the inside through the tunnel turn, but last time by through turn 3, the 20 of Dingman, we mentioned this is his last race in the MPI Cup Series. He just slapped the wall, so he's got a little bit of right side damage to that 20 machine, so he's having an uphill climb inside the top 15.
Kinder with issues. He was inside the provisional podium, now sliding back into 5th, but now Roswell Harlow looking to the outside of Hendry. Ray Richard regaining a spot into the top 10, and now Harlow will follow right along. And along with that, Richard trying to catch up to the pair of Shoemakers as well as we begin our long snake down the Pocono front straightaway.
You see them now spreading out. There's Justin Hendry almost about under fire. That was Adam Lancaster. Tried to peek to the inside, but we've seen that a couple times already, including from your race leaders, just chopping that nose off, making sure they don't get that run to the bottom side in turn 1. That's exactly what helped out Hendry in this case. The driver out of Mobile, Alabama, just still trying to hold off. And that Chevrolet Camaro, as you ride on board with him. Boy, this is one of the toughest corners of the track. That one right there, turn 2, just trying to hold on to that momentum and keep it. And it seems for Hendry that's working so far.
And now we talk about Mark Dingman out of Litchfield, Minnesota, the 28-year-old in his final race with the MPI Cup Series for Tech Hub Racing. Now, the graphic designer has been on iRacing for 3 years with over 20 official wins, but he has a condition called hydrocephalus. And with hydrocephalus, he has had over 20 brain surgeries in his lifetime. And he has had some phenomenal runs, some phenomenal races here in the MPI Cup Series. So cool to have Mark a part of this program. Gonna miss him once he's done here after Pocono tonight. But again, he started 37th. He's up 21 spots. So cool to see Dingman up here having a good run in his farewell race.
Yeah, he's definitely a contention for our biggest mover of the night so far, and he's got a lot of time still to improve on that. But yeah, that 20 machine is still looking pretty good outside of that damage he just received a few laps ago. So he's doing good for what he's got for the time being, and they have to see if he improves on his spots throughout the rest of the evening. And just ahead of him, he's got a little bit of a battle he might be able to get into here in a few laps between the 6 of Justin Reeves and the 21 of Garrett Brown. Reeves, we talked about him creeping up inside the top 15, and here he is right here taking advantage of your season 1 champion Garrett Brown, and he's gonna use that draft in front of him to get past the 21 machine and be able to close that door maybe in the turn 1, but no, the 21 is gonna come back down the inside line to see if that 6 is having to run off the high side. Looks like it gets a little bit squirrely through the center of the corner there, and here comes the 88 of Keith on the rebound.
And Warren Keith with the throwback, number 88, throwing his name into the hat, made the pass on Mark Dingman, now to the inside of Dustin Reeves, who will slide on back behind the number 88 machine. And the owner of Sega Keith Motorsports and the technician at Discount Tire makes another move as he tries to work his way back up through the field. He had internet issues earlier, had to exit the race. Due to the technical errors, he was able to get back on the lead lap. For the past now over 2 months, he has finished on the podium in every single race, and he still has an uphill battle to climb if he wants to get up to P3 before this race is over.
But he's got a lot of time. There's still a good amount of laps left to log down. Maybe some other yellows can bring the field together, and Warren Keith can try to put himself back and continue that consecutive streak of top 3s for the past while or so. But you're watching right now the battle between some of the top drivers. This is race leader Zach Wilson. Right behind him, Ray Rogers has been slowly hunting him down. This is one of the first time, guys, apart from John Kinder, that we're seeing anybody else try to take position away from your race leader. It's been all Zach Wilson at the head of this field, but there may be another driver to have something to say. Maybe Christopher Bedwell can join the fight as well. And we've talked about so much how Ray Rogers has been always there in the long runs, always peeking himself in, and always putting himself as a part of the conversation. He's putting himself center stage right now with a chance to fight for the race lead.
Rogers eyeing win number 4 on the season, the 49-year-old out of Florida driving for Tech Hub Racing. He's been on iRacing for 3 years, but spent over 20 years in WKA karting, so has a little bit of real-world racing experience, bringing that to the sim, and he has certainly showed off his speed, especially with these two gapping the field as we speak.
Yeah, and he's utilizing that draft. He had a great run through turn 1 that time, carried him down the long pong straightaway, but that couldn't do anything there into turns 2. But he backed up that corner really nicely. He's able to get another run off turn number 2, but he's just a little bit further back than what he'd like to be to make a move here to turn 3. And that's just one of the things that I've noticed between the two up front here. Wilson's been able to charge the center of the corner more than the 18 of Rogers has, and that might be part due to the dirty air. But now that 18 is sitting in that draft, utilizing that line, and here comes Wilson having to defend that line of the 18, and 18 is going to push him down for the time being. Now takes that peek to the inside line, and we got a battle for the lead going on now.
Rogers makes the dive. Wilson will let him by. New leader, the 18 of Ray Rogers, eyeing back-to-back championships through Season 2 and Season 3. Claims the lead for the first time tonight, and also for the first time since the beginning of this race. Zach Wilson has to go on hunter mode.
Yeah, this is one of the first times you see now Wilson in a position that he has to really fight for the lead with anybody else, and Rogers slowly pulling away already after just taking that spot away a couple corners ago. So for Wilson, he's already starting to fall back really in this long run. But one thing I'm going to mention here, guys, is that we've got a couple laps on this stint. We're going to go even longer on this stint if we stay green, and that means these guys will have to pit at least one more time before this thing is all said and done. They're going to get very close on fuel here, and of course the tire wear is going to be even worse coming to this race, so with the way the surface affects these race cars. So we may have to look for a place in strategy. Here's a move a little bit further back. That is the 21 of Garrett Brown, side by side with Justin Hendry. A little bit of contact as they tried the crossover out of 1. A little bit on the bumps there goes the 21. Boy, it's a dogfight right here, and as Keith gets the position.
Easy pickings for Warren Keith, now pulling up on the rear bumper of Justin Hendry in the number 28 machine. Keith now up to the 14th position, and going back to strategy as we still have 33 laps to go this time by. With the draft here, I assume you really want to make green flag pit stops in a group. These teams all have communication with one another. But when do you want to pit? At a short track or in a half mile, you might have the preference. You want to go first or you want to wait as long as possible. What's the call here at Pocono, though?
The biggest thing is just running that tank out as much as you can. It's almost like a super speedway. You want as little fuel to the car as possible, so that way you can maximize your straightaway speed. So I look for these guys to run the tank out as much as they can. They already made it 25 laps in stage 2, so I'm looking for them to cut this run in half because they were last down on the pit lane around lap 42, 43, around that area. So if you cut that in half, that's about 24, 25 laps on each end of the run. So these guys can cut the stage in half, and if they need to, they could go that extra little distance, maybe 26, 27 laps on a tank of gas to get that tank completely dry and give it as little fuel as you need to the car for that last push to the end here in stage 3. So I expect these guys to run it dry, maximize their time on track, and have as little fuel in the car to maximize straightaway speed.
And this is a fixed setup series, and I think everyone at this point has to try to answer the question, how do we catch up to Zach Wilson and Ray Rogers? And now Ray Rogers has already eclipsed a 1-second lead on the field, Kenneth. So with it being a fixed setup, you have to ask the question when you go down pit road, what can I do to catch these two?
Well, you really have to just do it on driving style. You have to use that strategy, whether you take a little amount of tires, whether you play with the fuel capacity that you put in your race car where you can barely get in, or if you play with the lap that you go down pit road. You can try the overcut, make some space. At the end, you could basically hold off and make distance to some of the leaders. But you ask that question, can anyone catch Ray Rogers or can anyone catch Zach Wilson? I think for the latter question, the answer is slowly starting to come and unfold, because Christopher Bedwell and John Kinder have been right at it with Zach Wilson. They both set faster times than Zach Wilson that last time by, so they are really starting to put the pressure. Right now, Devin, you look up front to turn 1, there's lap traffic in the mix. We don't know how that's going to affect as Ray Rogers now will have to peek by them.
And so I'll throw that into the former Coca-Cola Series driver. How does lap traffic mess you up a little bit here at Pocono? Drafting, but dirty air at the same time, right?
Yeah, the dirty air is definitely going to be the biggest part of it. The fact that he's going to pass these two in the tunnel turn, but he's catching them up really fast. The 38 of Stevens and the 10 of Brackett. Brackett's going to stay in line in front of the 18 machine as the 38 gets out of the way there, but that's going to give him a wash of dirty air on the 18's front end right there, Ray Rogers, and that's going to slow him down just that little bit. Obviously, he has a comfortable gap now, over 1.5 seconds on track right now, so that's not too big of a worry right now. But when it comes down to it, if he has a car on his bumper, he's going to have a lot of issues when it comes down to it. As you see the 10 machine getting out of the way on the front stretch there of your leader. But when it comes down to it, if he's got a car on his bumper, it's going to be interesting to see how that dirty air plays a factor. Obviously, like you said, the pull, the straightaways for the draft is going to be important, but at certain speeds, the draft isn't really helpful with the likes of the 10 of bracket as you saw there on the straightaway.
4 wide in turn 1, trouble in turn 1, car in the fence. It's the 4 car of Chris Shoemaker who was on the outside of a 4 wide situation. That I knew was not going to work watching it. Daniel Michel, Ross Harlow, and Ray Richard went 4 wide into turn 1. Issues for 1 car getting sideways but kept going, but the 4 machine gets the worst of it with some big right side damage as Kevin Hurley makes the move on a pair of cars.
You know, take a look at it right here. This is going into turn 1. Watch that move all the way to the inside, and that could have been very large between the Chevrolet Camaro, and I believe that was Brian Fine who got a piece of that as well. We talked about him so much tonight. A driver in a point situation, just trying to keep himself and his playoff hopes alive, but things got very scary there at turn 1. I think the good part about it, nobody got any sort of big damage. Actually, no, that was Roswell Harlow rather on the inside there, 3 wide, but you see here from Richard just trying to get the draft and goes, why not? Tries to use the space at turn 1 and dives it very deep. Unfortunately, not enough of space to make it work. Luckily, everybody saved it. That could have been a very big mess, even including Warren Cockey, who was trying to go on the upswing.
Harlow was not ready for that last second dip by Richard, although unfortunately it was Michelle having issues in the middle of the corner that actually bumped him out of the way on the high side, and that's where the contact came. Meanwhile, Harlow is now in 9th, Michelle in 8th, Richard in 10th, and Hendry now trying to hunt down Richards. We looked at the replay one last time, and how about the save here from the 88? A little bit of contact in front of him, but Warren Keith able to save it. Loses a pair of positions though.
Yeah, Keith was able to save it. The 4 of Chris Shoemaker got the worst of that, getting left side damage from the hit from Michel and slapping the wall very hard. So he got the worst end of it. He's still holding on back at that 21st spot, but he is definitely slower in the straight line compared to those around him. So we'll have to keep an eye on him and see how he compares the rest of this race. As you see a battle with the 11 of Dakota Curtis and the 20 Mark Dingman. This is just inside the top 20. These guys door to door down the straightaway, and looks as though that draft is prevailing for that 20 down the straightaway that time by. And the Curtis has the preferred line going through turn 2, and they almost make contact. They do make a little contact through turn 2 that time, as the 20 turned in just a little bit early, clipped the 11 machine, and the 20 and the 11 keep it going straight.
And your top 3 now is mixed up just a little bit. John Kinder making the move on Christopher Bedwell for that 3rd position, the last spot on the podium. And for John Kinder, we've seen the speed out of all Black Car Mafia as of late. Got the win in Atlanta to lock his way into the playoffs. Showing off a little bit more speed tonight, and you really got to like the hustle out of the 12 car so far at Pocono.
Hey, you definitely do. And with the way his season has gone so far, he's had a lot of promising runs. Even when he made his first start in this series that made it start at Charlotte, I remember him doing what, a couple other tracks. I mean, last week wasn't the best for him, finished 31st after all of it, disconnected at the end of it all, but this is a nice rebound for points, even though he's already locked in. And with the way that he's been consistently performing, this is definitely a good sign of things to come when you go to the playoffs in a couple weeks time at the Daytona Road Course. See him now, he's got a little bit of long run speed, guys. I'm not sure whether he'll be able to fare well with Ray Rogers, but as for Zach Wilson, he's been reeling him in the last couple times by, and he may be the new face of second place in this next lap or so if he's able to get by.
Another mini Hornet's Nest has begun to form. In 9th, Justin Hendry now trying to hold off Adam Lancaster, Ross Harlow, and Ray Richard. Meanwhile, Zach Wilson under attack for 2nd, nearly banging doors off of turn number 1, and Wilson retains it. Contact in turn 1, Ross Harlow and Richard get into each other. Richard's going to get the worst out of this one as he's still looking for points on the bottom side of the cut line. Massive loss for the 44, and still a pretty large loss for the 19 of Harlow as well.
Yeah, this is the 2nd incident between these two in the past few laps with that 4 wide incident. Now this, as you take a look at the replay, the 44 of Richard is dialing up that move behind the 19 machine. You see that orange bumper peeking out, and he just cooks it over to turn 1 and gives hard shots there to the rear bumper of the 19 of Harlow. So not sure if there's still some animosity from that last incident a few laps ago where they went 4 wide to turn 1 or not, but a 44 getting into the rear bump of the 19 there and setting him up the track, and the 44 gets the worst of it.
Major issues for Richard, and now we have our first takers on pit road as well here, Kenneth.
And you see right there, that was Christopher Bedwell going down pit road. Saw Dustin Reeves go down pit road. There's one of the Ford Mustangs. I believe that's Shoemaker down pit road as well. A handful of others now going in. That's Garrett Brown making his stop. So we talked about when was the perfect time to pit. For a lot of drivers, the time is now to go to the end of this race and try to split it at about 30-30. Make your way, or about 20-30 rather, or 25-25 to go to the end of this race. And now the biggest question is, what will the leaders do? How far will Ray Rogers stretch this out? Will he stretch it even further out like he did at Auto Club, or will he try a shorter strategy, go a couple laps after, or maybe just trying to watch whether the guys behind him end up going down pit road? And speaking of which, driver in the top 5, John Kinder, has made his way down as well.
So now a few leaders wanting to take the trip down pit road. Meanwhile, 3 wide with Warren Keith on the outside into turn number 1. Hurley and Hendry make up the sandwich, and Hendry will decide, nah, I don't want to do this, and back off. And Kevin Hurley will now inherit the 4th position during this pit cycle. The initial pit stops coming with 25 laps to go. What are you thinking here, Michael? Do you now need to pit since about a quarter of the field has went down to pit road now?
I mean, it really depends on where you're at in the field. Ray Rogers, he can still sit up for a few more laps, and he's more focused on when it comes down to Zach Wilson. He's had big enough lead to where if he pits later than everybody else, he's going to have a huge tire advantage, and he's going to be able to take advantage of those spots when it all cycles out at the end. But if I'm at the likes of the 17th Thomas, the few cars back here, the 7th place machine of Hurley, these guys, I would be coming down this time just that way I can get a little bit of advantage compared to those around me. You're getting a little bit of an undercut. You're going to be in the back for the rest of the race, but then gain a few spots here or there, maybe hold on to it at the end when the tires start to even out.
So Zach Wilson now in second, with the driver previously in second going on to pit road. But Wilson, of course, had the lead before Ray Rogers took it. The gap between them now 3.2 seconds, and I have to imagine that wherever that light switch is in the number 18 Toyota Camry, he said, time to go, flip the switch, and Ray Rogers has turned on the afterburners ever since. With a massive lead like this over Zach Wilson, you have to be wondering, what else do some of these guys have in the tank to catch up to Ray Rogers, who has been outstanding here in this concluding stage of the race?
And we saw it a couple of weeks ago at Auto Club. We saw the 18 of Ray Rogers just control the lead, and then in the final pit stop of the race, that final strategic move, Rogers was able to cycle back to first, hold on to the lead by a very large margin, and win that race. So while Ray Rogers has just been on this long run tear, he's been able to execute well in these types of situations. And we see it a couple times before at Homestead Miami Speedway, even a little bit in the first couple races of the season, where he had that long run strategy, had a battle for position, but was able to execute better than the other driver and pretty much just sailed away with a race win. So that's exactly what's in Ray Rogers' wheelhouse, and that's what he's trying to do right now. Just extend this strategy, execute, hit his marks, and he should be the race winner if this stays green. But for everybody else, it's all about when they're going to pit. How long are they going to stay out, and really what tire strategies are they going to use, because they're going to have fresh rubber, but it's all about how they cycle back and whether they're able to catch up to Ray Rogers in about of time. So it's going to be very big for these guys. But again, execution will be big in the final 20 laps of this race.
Green flag pit stops, what they're hoping to be the final cycle of pit stops happening here, coming to 20 laps to go, this time the tricky triangle 225 for the MPI Cup Series. Glad to have you all here watching on Podium Esports, now on Podium 2 and Facebook as well. Got a couple Monday Night Racing guys, Max Kennan getting deleted for too much caps going on in the Podium 2 chat. Raja Karuth also coming on in as well to the Podium chat as well. And of course, big thank you to all the new followers. And coming up tomorrow, the qualifying series for Monday Night Racing. Anthony Alfredo's Esports Racing League taking the NASCAR car of tomorrow to Kansas. That's going to be a wacky one coming up here on Podium Esports. Also, your home of the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro qualifying series as well. For whatever reason, I can't see the title of it to save my life. Chris Bedwell now currently in the 28th position. You see him here in his rookie race of the season. A great showing, though, here by the 95.
Yeah, very good showing for the 95 at this point, but now he had sped on pit road, so a penalty was issued to him, and he's going to lose a lot of spots as a result. But look for the leader right now. Ray Rogers, the 18 machine, goes down pit road, just exiting after his service. We asked just to how long he would stay on a pit road. Well, it seemed to be a couple laps, and now it's all about whether he can cycle back to P1. Zach Wilson has stayed out. Warren Kyle Keith, Justin Hendry, Dakota Curtis, and a handful of others have elected to stay this strategy further down the line. So now the big question comes for them as to how they can execute. Wilson tapping the outside wall a little bit, but there's Rogers off of turn 2, or turn 1 rather, and the 51 now just coming to turn 1.
Hendry now pitting from the 4th position, and he will relinquish that. Warren Keith has now taken over the 2nd spot. 7 straight races for Keith, finishing on the podium. It all started with his victory at Charlotte Motor Speedway, where he outlasted the top 2 on fuel, 1st and 2nd run out. He goes and takes the win, and ever since has finished on the podium in every points-paying race, including a remarkable dominating win at Circuit of the Americas last week for his season-leading 4th victory of the year. He's going to have to find a little bit extra in the tank, though, to drive this thing up past everyone once the cycle concludes. Zach Wilson is still your leader and still needs to pit, along with the majority of the top 10. Ray Rogers, though, who led this race before he pitted, right now in the 9th position.
Yeah, we're looking at Rogers, and we're having to see it compare when it comes out to the cycle of where Rogers is currently at. As when they do cycle through, your leader based on short pitting is going to be the 14 of Shoemaker, Austin Shoemaker, in 8th. I mean, he, along with the 12 machine of Kinder, these guys are 7th and 8th currently right now on your scoreboard, and these guys are in contention right now on their strategy to be up front. Now they're just going to have to play defense the rest of the way. When it comes out to the end of the run, they're going to be a little bit disadvantaged on speed, but looking at lap times, Ray Rogers last time by ran a 53.6 compared to the likes of Kinder's 54.0 and 53.9 from Shoemaker. So the gap is there. The time is not as big as I expected on the short run here for complete between the tires on the 18 machine and the tires of the 14 and 12. So interesting to see how that's going to play out the rest of this run. And one big factor is the fact that Rogers is by himself, no real draft help. He's the likes of Kinder and Shoemaker rather close to each other, so these guys can work together and pull away when it comes down to it. So it's going to be down to how Rogers works through the traffic and works up and keeps that speed up, and see if he gets to the back bumper of these two with the closing laps.
That's just a tire strength, Michael, though. Just how big it is for guys like Ray Rogers. When you get down pit road, when you get that fresh set of rubber, it is like your car is a freight train and a rocket, just going so fast and being so much more grippier around this racetrack than everybody else. And for Kinder, I mean, coming out at the exact same spot around where Ray Rogers was sitting at the time, and as they were trying to cycle through, Ray Rogers is going to start to creep in at some point, and he's going to start to take control because of those fresh tires. But the biggest point is just how you control those tires, really, whether you're able to hold on, take care of them instead of burning them up very quickly. And at that point, it's going to be very dangerous for you, because if Rogers just burns up his tires at this point, he's going to lose a lot of ground. And in turn, if this stays green, could really cost him the race win here at Pocono.
Coming to 15 laps to go. And how did the strategy turn out? Zach Wilson pitted later than the rest of the top 5. Zach Wilson was only a few seconds behind Ray Rogers when he pitted. He is now 14 seconds behind Ray Rogers, who isn't even the leader once we cycle through. That would be John Kinder, who's in P6. Wilson is 16 seconds behind John Kinder. Now Wilson just has to fight back with that fresh rubber, but that's a massive change, guys. That's almost a 17-second turnaround?
Yeah, it's a huge gap, and there must have been a difference in pit road entry or some kind of pit stop timing there for those two, as that gap was only a few laps difference between when they came down pit lane. So Rogers definitely has that speed on short run as well, so he definitely proved that and was able to use those tires to pull away on the short run compared to Wilson, who stayed out those few extra laps longer than the 18 machine of Rogers. But yeah, Wilson's just got on the back foot right now. I mean, he's behind the likes of Hurley right now, and as well as Garrett Brown. Those guys were just on the cusp of the top 10 earlier before the pit cycle started. So now these guys are in a very precarious situation, and now with likes of Wilson, who was up front on the podium for most of this run, he's gonna have a hard time even getting back to the likes of Rogers, Winters, Kinder, or Shoemaker, as you were mentioning.
So make it, I believe Austin Shoemaker now will be the leader once we go through the entire cycle, about 0.8 of a second in front of Kinder. Shoemaker pitted a lap before Kinder. So far, 3 cars have not pitted. That's Dakota Curtis, Warren Keith, and Brian Fine. But Keith now takes the trip to pit road, which will leave only Curtis out as Brian Fine heads to pit road. Curtis at this point might just be looking for a caution, the only driver on the lead lap yet to make a trip down pit road.
And you got to think now that there may be a sense of danger here, or impending doom for some of these guys who are staying out this long, because the leaders that were up front at the time before you started this cycle have already gone down pit road, have already grasped their tires. And for guys like John Kinder, Ray Rogers, Justin Winters, Austin Shoemaker, they got their fresh tires. They're in key position to cycle back, and they're gaining time. The time is fairly large at about 10 seconds from first to second right now, and even further back from third behind. But the time is starting to trickle down, so when Dakota Curtis stays out longer on the tires, he's further in turn losing more time, and now he's going to go down pit road, going to be one of the last drivers to extend this stay, and that's going to allow Austin Shoemaker, who should cycle back to net P1, but will be under heavy fire in the next couple of laps. So he'll cycle back, and the time will relinquish for Dakota Curtis in that race lead. We'll see how things cycle out in the final 13 laps of this race.
13 to go, and Austin Shoemaker for Prestige Worldwide Racing inherits the lead over John Kinder by half a second. Another half second behind them is Ray Rogers. Less than half a second behind that is Justin Winters. And now you're going to see all the tire strategies start to play off. So, Michael, when you see these tires and all the differences in age, when do these all kind of start to just kind of fall off and become equal?
Well, usually there's a point in the run where, like you mentioned, they do usually equal out, and we're almost getting to that point. Usually it's about lap 15, lap 20 in a run, which is being closer towards the end of the race. But Rogers still has a little bit of life left in those tires before they even out with those who pitted earlier, and he's utilizing that advantage still. As you see now, he's finally in the frame with your top 3 right now as he's closing on the back bumper of Kinder down the front straightaway. I mean, they were down to 12 laps to go this time by, so now that they're all within a second of each other, your top 3. So now it's all to play for, with the fresher tires going to Ray Rogers and the oldest ones going to Shoemaker. As these guys are going to start battling for the second spot here, as Rogers takes advantage of a Kinder mistake, utilizing that higher side, and now they're going to be door to door down the Long Pond Straight.
Drag race into turn number 2. Ray Rogers not going to be able to clear the 12 as Shoemaker watches this battle for second through the rear windshield, through the mirror. Ray Rogers, the defending series champion, taking over the second position. Shoemaker, Rogers, Kinder, your top 3, and Ray Rogers isn't done taking names yet.
Now, he's the fastest one of the racetrack out of the top 3 so far, and he continues to hunt down on these two who are on those older sets of tires. It seemed as though Rogers did a better job taking care of his tires as apart to the rest of the field, as here comes the pass to turn 1 down the straightaway. On the front straightaway, here he'll go to the bottom side. Ray Rogers takes back the race lead and goes back to P1, where he was already scheduled to be net-wise when he went down pit road in the final 10 laps of this race. This is a pivotal moment for Rogers to take his 4th win of the season.
3 wins this year coming at Homestead Miami, Auto Club Speedway, and Dover International Speedway. Looking to add the tricky triangle to that list and become the second 4-time winner in the MPI Cup Series. He certainly has the tires right now, passing the top 2, and he certainly had the speed before the pit stops, adding up a 3-second lead. And this time by, it's just going to be 10 laps to go for the Tech Hub Racing driver.
Yep, now he's just going to hold a pretty wheel the rest of this race and be able to mitigate traffic as much as he can. He just has to set sail at this point. I'm curious to see what the tires are going to do for Shoemaker and to see if he's able to hold off Kinder in the closing stages, as these guys have been nose to tail this entire second part of the run after the green flag cycle. So this will be a fun little battle to watch, and be interested to see if Winters of the 52 can hold on to that 4th spot and maybe even close in on these guys. He's a little bit slower, but we'll have to see if the tires do flip around for him. But now you're looking at the likes of Zach Wilson in the 51 machine. We talked about him earlier, pitting later than everybody else, having a 14-second gap to Ray Rogers. That gap has come down to 10 seconds, so he's making time, but he's just so far back with so little time to go, as the one car you saw right there on your screen nailed the outside wall, and that almost brought out a caution, but the one machine and Mike Thomas hold on to it as Zach Wilson flies by him.
A couple of drivers who've really benefited from this pit cycle. First of all is Adam Lancaster in P6, who's put together a very good showcase in his first race with the MPI Cup Series. But how about James Kunkel? Haven't talked about him all night, but the 31-year-old out of Columbus, Georgia, up to P13 tonight. Kunkel has been in the back most of the race, but now in front of Ray Richer here, just outside the top 10, putting together a good race here.
Yeah, and really the general consensus between both of these drivers, Devin, from Lancaster and Kunkel, they started around 20th to 25th. Kunkel started all the way back in 25th up to 13th, while Lancaster started right at the edge of the top 20 and is now to the top 6. So these two drivers, although they have been kind of having quiet starts so far tonight, they really executed, put themselves in the spotlight on this final strategy. And even guys, for Lancaster, his first race in this series, how big of a statement would that be to walk away with a top 10, fighting with some of the best in this series as Wilson tries to get by on some of the fresher tires going to turn 1. But for Lancaster and Kunkel, these are very big showouts here at the Long Pond.
Wilson to the inside of Adam Lancaster going into turn number 1 here. And how about Steven Ayers Jr. started 34th, now into 26th for Flashpoint Racing. Not always a guy that we talk about, but always likes to try to grab some sneaky good finishes.
Yeah, he's been able to take advantage of some wrecks here and there, and he's been able to find his way up closer towards the top 25, and he's got a solid run here still going for him. Kevin Rockwell, we documented he had a little bit of damage earlier, but he's been able to rebound slightly, moving up a few more spots to the 28th. And this isn't going to be one of those performances for him that's going to help him out when it comes down to the cutoff with the likes of Brian Fine going up into the top 15, the likes of Justin Henry being up there as well. Ryan Kendall missed this race, so that might help him jump that as well, but Kip Easley had damage behind him. Richard's been in a few incidents, so it's going to be a topsy-turvy kind of night for the cutoff, and Rockwell might be all right for the time being with that 28th spot.
Now, Rockwell, one of the drivers just on the cut line for the playoffs, fighting for his playoff life, came into today 1 point behind the cut line, and now the battle for second between Austin Shoemaker and John Kinder. Kinder locked into the playoffs. Austin Shoemaker coming into tonight 12th on the playoff leaderboard. Plenty of points, though, ahead of that cutoff line. I'm just trying to piece together a string of good finishes for Prestige Worldwide Racing. But John Kinder continues to show off a little bit of power for Black Car Mafia.
And Shoemaker's trying to get his second straight top 5 so far. Got a 4th place finish at Coda last week, so he was able to get the best out of the road course strategy and could be looking for a 3rd place finish or a 2nd place finish if he can hold on right now to John Kinder. But I think Michael can attest to this at this point. Ray Rogers is walking away with this race lead in the final 5 laps of this race. These guys are relatively still quick on the long run as you see Kinder kind of smack the outside wall, but you're probably going to be hoping for a caution. I mean, there's no way you're probably going to be able to catch up to Rogers unless something dramatic happens. So in the final laps of this race, you want something to go wild for Ray Rogers or for a yellow to come out and bunch the field back up. Before these two drivers, at least for now, their mindset could just be either hoping for a yellow or just trying to get the best that they can as Kinder goes under Shoemaker for second.
Yeah, Kinder does make that move right there, and he will take over that second spot for the time being, but there might be a crossover by the 14 of Shoemaker, who peeks out on that front stretch. He's gonna have that side draft down the front straightaway here at Pocono. He's gonna have that side draft, and it's not really working out for him for the time being, but he's still door to door as they go off into turn 1. But yeah, Kenneth, you're mentioning Ray Rogers has already put up a 3-second gap to these guys. So when it comes down to it, I mean, if they want the win, a caution's got to come into play or some kind of incident or mishap on the 18 machine's part. But these guys are just battling out for P2 for the time being and hoping that the likes of Zach Wilson doesn't get back to them as they come down the closing laps here. But Kinder taking over second spot.
Kinder fending off Shoemaker through turn 1 and able to gain a little bit of a gap. And you guys have mentioned it a couple times, probably the fatal flaw for a lot of drivers here tonight, including right there off of the corner in front of Zach Wilson. That was Ryan Thomas. A lot of these guys need to be a little bit less forward, you know? You really should ask the wall out for a date before some of these guys are getting so intimate.
Yeah, but I think we better have a wall smack counter here in this race because we've seen a lot of drivers have issues, and it's mostly pretty much out of every corner. I mentioned it at the top of the broadcast. this track and each and every corner is like a three-headed beast. You can master one corner, but the other two and pretty much every corner in this racetrack can bite at any given moment. So we've seen drivers hit the wall off turn 1. We've seen them with the momentum off turn 2 hit the wall as well. And then turn 3 just trying to get as much speed as possible. And then smacking the wall barely, just trying to keep their cars off of it. As you're watching the battle right now for 5th and 6th. You saw Lancaster fall to 7th. So Ryan Thomas now peaks to 6th and is trying to catch up to Zach Wilson for these final spots. These are great finishes for these guys and some of the top contenders in this series. But at front and up controlling this pace, Ray Rogers looking for that 4th win to even further establish his prominence in this series.
The defending champion looking to make it back-to-back. He's already locked into the playoffs, now just racking up playoff points race after race. After tonight, just 2 more races remain until we move into the round of 16. Another great showcase here. Black Car Mafia has moved up and really started showing speed these past few weeks. We've talked about John Kinder in second, but how about Justin Winters? Said his name a lot tonight, and now Winters looking to hold on to the 4th position.
Yeah, these guys had a pretty good showing when it came to likes of Atlanta a few weeks ago. I mean, those guys finished in the front for the most part. I mean, you had the 12 of Kinder, the 83 of Wide Bracket had a very good finish there as well, and Winters showed a lot of speed when it came down to it. So they definitely showed a lot of pace here. They're doing it at the right time with only a couple races here left in the regular season before we move to the round of 16, the playoffs. So not a better time to get into postseason form here, get an idea of what your pace is like compared to the rest of the field. And they're definitely putting on a show here as you see the 88 machine here of one Kyle Keith, who's done a really good job of rebounding so far ahead of the 28 machine of Justin Henry. These guys, he just took over that 10th spot right there, and Keith comes back from connection issues to a top 10 spot right now. And I think at the end of the day, I think that's something he'll take home and be happy with when it comes down to it.
Yeah, great perseverance by the driver, the 88. Came into today, though, with a 7-race streak of finishing on the podium. He's going to have to settle, though, for his 8th straight race of finishing in the top 10 instead. But for Ray Rogers, him and Warren Keith have won the most races this year. Keith has the 4 victories, and tonight, so long as the 18 can take another lap, he will tie with Keith for 4 wins on the season as the 18 takes the Sim Speed Shop 1 to go. And for Ray Rogers, his goal is simple: to back up last year's championship win at Phoenix. And right now, racking up playoff points, he is looking fast, and he's looking like he has a mighty buffer moving into the playoffs.
And this is really the show out of a previous champion. We talk about guys like Garrett Brown, that season 1 champion, also performing fairly strong. But for Rogers, coming fresh off that championship last season, this is a big comeback to let the field know, hey, I've got this championship, but I'm still not done on my quest yet. Out of turn 2, this will be another great, phenomenal strategy call by the 18 to be dominant near the end and coming to look for his 4th race win of 2021.
Racking up the playoff points, the defending champion says, I'm still here, and I am still the car to beat. Off of the final turn, number 3, the 18 to the checkered flag, Ray Rogers wins the Tricky Triangle, 225 for Tech Hub Racing.
Another sneaky good performance by the 18 machine of Rogers, and it really goes to show that pace he had. The strategy was right for him. He ran that tank dry and utilized those tires late, was able to take advantage of the likes of Kinder and Shoemaker.
So Tech Hub Racing taking the victory, 2 Black Car Mafia machines in the top 4. And Prestige Worldwide Racing represented by Austin Shoemaker in 3rd. And Sega Keith Motorsports' Zach Wilson. He will pick up the 5th place position, but dominated most of today, guys.
Yeah, dominated most of this race. Zach Wilson, I'm sure this is not the result he wanted after his performance all night long. You would have hoped to stay up at the top, but nonetheless, 5th place finish, still a good amount of points. And even further back in the grid, Warren Kyle Keith, that disconnection earlier on could have been a sign that he could have just given up and just walked away, just running away with a DNF, but instead reconnected, got back in the fight, and ran a top 10. A solid, formidable effort for the driver of that 88. But the spotlight lies in the sunset of the 18 of Ray Rogers. He'll burn it down for the 4th time this year. Again, another walk-off victory, and just still looking with high momentum when we get to the playoffs in 3 weeks' time.
Hi everyone, I'm Max Papis, founder of MPI. Let me introduce you to a line that we developed in MPI that is really dear to me. The MPI SimMax. Obviously, SimMax, the guy here. The reason of birth of SimMax is the fact that nowadays I believe that sim racing and virtual racing is exactly the platform to start. I consider sim racing and virtual racing very similar to the experience I had in go-kart when I started in my racing. And let me introduce you to our line of authentic steering wheel created specifically for the sim community.
They say that perfection doesn't exist in this game. Most players just don't have it in them. But those who dare to seek it might catch excellence. And that sounds perfect to me. So, I'm done playing. Let's drive.
The tricky triangle 250 dominated by 2 cars, but out on top is now tied for the most wins on the season. Ray Rogers taking the victory here at Pocono, followed by John Kinder in second and Austin Shoemaker your podium. We'll talk to them in just a moment. Justin Winters brings it home in 4th and Zach Wilson in 5th. Ryan Thomas climbing back up to 6th. Adam Lancaster had his issues early, but comes up to 7th in his MPI Cup Series debut. Kevin Hurley comes home in 8th. The Season 1 champion Garrett Brown in 9th, and Warren Kyle Keith make it 8 straight races of top 10s.
Back to 11, Justin Hendry gets a nice comeback here in the 28 machine. Dakota Curtis for Tech Up Racing will fall to 12th. At the end of it all, Daniel Holdcroft will pick up the 13th after finishing 14th, just around the same place he started on the grid. Dustin Reeves, though, with a larger comeback, 22nd to 14th at the start-finish line to end this race. Roswell Harlow could have been a better night, but ends up top 15 at the end of it all. Ray Richer to 16th, 17th belonging to James Kunkel in the 3 machine. Chris Pogard falling to 18th, Brian Fine to 19th, and David Brackett in the 83, completing your top 20 from Pocono.
Yep, and looking outside the top 20, they had the likes of Michelle, who's caught up in a little bit of an incident. Going 4 wide into turn 1, didn't quite work out for him. Christopher Bedwell, we saw him compete up towards the front, towards the closing stage, but that speeding penalty that brought him back down to 23rd. The likes of Sean Kalis and Stephen Ayers Jr. running at the top 25, who was staying on the lead lap. Everyone else from Shoemaker on down, a lap down. Mark Damon, his last race in the MPI Cup Series, did not go to plan. And back in 27th with Rockwell and Thomas, losing out some points on the cutoff line in the closing races here. It's going to be crucial for them when it comes down to it here, the last race before the regular season ends.
And trouble for everyone else in the field. Wyatt Brackett 7 laps down after a wild ride. Kip Beasley, Judd Danielson, Alex Muscarella, Zach Taylor, Richard Swaveling, Justin Gann, your 37 car field here at Pocono. Well, let's go ahead and bring in your victory here in the tricky triangle 225. Ray Rogers has now won at a 1 mile track, 1.5 mile track. I'm missing one, 2 mile track at Auto Club, and now 2.5 mile. I mean, it's all working out pretty well, but it seemed like there was just a flip that you seemed to switch in around stage 2, stage 3, and I don't know, the afterburners came on. What happened there? You picked up speed immediately.
I just saved them tires. I saved that right front for about 10 laps, and then after that, I just started, coming on strong. And I watched those guys in front of me. I saw them pushing up the track, so I knew that they were going to be burning that right front off. That it's just a matter of time before I get around them.
And you seem to be pretty good at those final stage green flag pit stops. We saw you do the same thing at Auto Club as well with the green flag pit stop. How do you strategize track to track, figuring out what lap do you need to pit on to get the most out of your car and just seem to make it work every single time?
That's a good question. Really, when I come into a race, I really don't have a strategy. When I do my my practice laps during the week, I kind of get an idea how many tires, you're going to have and when to pit and all that. But you can't really do that with cautions and all that come out. But this particular race, I seen it was going to be a green flag run for the most part. So tires didn't, hold up very well. So I figured, okay, I'll just wait and pit, after them guys, and hopefully, they wouldn't get too far out in front of me. And then when I saw Austin, Shoemaker, and John Kinder about 5 seconds ahead of me, I really thought that there was no way I was going to catch them. I didn't realize they would get that far ahead.
And now I'm looking ahead. You're going to the Brickyard at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. You're tied with Warren Kyle Keith for the most wins on the season. And at this point, I know it's about the stage wins and the victories. They're both very important for those playoff points. But what's the mindset going into Indy and also Bristol just to maximize those stage points, to have those leads when you go into the round of 16, the round of 12, the round of 8?
I just go in there, just do what I can. I can only control what Ray can control. The Brickyard's a very fun track. I actually familiarize it with Pocono here. It's just, for some reason, it feels the same to me a little bit, and love it. Love the Brickyard. So definitely look forward to going there. Now, Bristol, that's just going to be a toss-up. There's no telling what's going to happen there. That's going to be just try to avoid what you can avoid.
Well, Ray seems to be controlling things pretty well when he comes out to a number of tracks. Victory number 4 on the year for Ray Rogers. Congratulations on the victory, and we'll see you 2 more races before your playoff hunt begins for championship number 2.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Ray Rogers there, your victor here in the Tricky Triangle, 2:25. Now I'll hand on over to Kenneth Bueno. He is caught up with the number 12 machine. Another great finish for John Kinder and Black Car Mafia.
And here with John Kinder. And John, another solid performance here from the Pocono Raceway. And in this 2021 season, you've already locked yourself in via the win at Atlanta Motor Speedway. But just walk us through this final segment for you and what you think could have been gone differently for you to capture your second win tonight.
We tried the shortcut Ray a little bit and see if we could get track position. We did, but Austin had the same idea, and we just had nothing for Ray. He was flying.
Well, it certainly came down to a lot of the long-run strategies, and we talk about just how abrasive this Pocono Raceway is, and of course the way you mastered Atlanta a couple weeks back. That surface, I think, is even rougher than this one, but in a way, was there any sort of takeaways you can kind of gather in a way from a track like Pocono that's very different from a lot of the others? Was there any kind of notes that you could have taken that probably could have gone into the way this race went for you?
Well, Pocono is a good judge of who will be fast at Indy. I think the guys that are fast at Pocono will be fast at Indy because it's got one similar corner. But this is just a weird racetrack. And Ray just did a way better job than everybody else of knowing when to back up the corner. And they just did a good job. Couldn't catch him.
Well, nonetheless, you represent one of 2 Black Car Mafia machines to end up in the top 5. Your teammate Justin Winders coming home in the 4th spot. Last time that happened was when you won at Atlanta, and I know you're the only one in the playoffs, but in these final 2 races, Indianapolis and Bristol, going to the Daytona Road Course, what's going to be the focus going to those 2 races? Is there any going to be changes, or do you think you've got that plan formatted and already set on the way for when you get ready for road course racing to start the playoffs?
Well, I think, being new to the series, learning all these guys and learning how to race around each other and get them trusting me trusting them. These last couple of races, I gotta finish these races. I've had a hard time. I'm either running up front or I'm wrecked on the trailer. So I got to finish the last 2, get some momentum, and go into the playoffs.
Well, certainly a lot of optimism and momentum coming out of this one. A 2nd place finish, John. We congratulate you on your finish here tonight from Pocono. And of course, we look forward to watching what you can do over from Indianapolis and Bristol going to the playoffs in a couple weeks' time.
Well, I appreciate it, guys.
John Kinder coming home in 2nd for Black Car Mafia. Another solid performance for them too, but a solid performance for the Prestige Worldwide Racing Camp, and Austin Shoemaker in the 14. Another top 5 finish. He is currently standing trackside with Michael Guerrilla.
Yeah, I'm down here trackside with the 14 machine of Austin Shoemaker. And Austin, you've had it up and down the past few weeks or so, and looks as though you've had a pretty solid finish today, finishing 3rd tonight. It's got to feel good getting that solid points result heading to the playoffs here in just a few weeks, huh?
Yep, absolutely. We needed a good run tonight. We've had a few good runs the past couple weeks. We had a good run at Circuit of Americas, and then was able to follow it up this week with another top 3 finish.
Now, when it came down late, you wanted to undercut John Kinder there by just a lap, and it turned out that you were in the lead with about 15 to go, and you saw that Rogers was about 6-7 seconds behind you. Did you feel like you could have held him off for the likes of Kinder once Rogers got past you, or do you feel like you were just kind of having to play with what you got there at the end?
Yeah, I pitted a little earlier than most, which definitely helped me out. I think I pitted probably around 10th or so and came out and held the lead for a little while, which seemed to help me out quite a bit. But then Ray came out of the pits 6.5 seconds back, so I thought it'd be pretty close. He had a good car all night, and then he caught us with like 10 to go and checked out from there. So, yeah, I was able to have a good race there with John Kinder at the end, but Ray was on another level tonight.
Yeah, he was on another level tonight. But one thing we did notice tonight was the fact that it was really hard to pull away from other drivers, especially when it got separated out, especially with the battle with you and Kinder. You guys really couldn't separate yourselves once you guys got single filed and by yourselves. Do you feel like it was really hard to pass tonight? You really had to really think of a way to set up your passes tonight?
Yeah, you had to pick your spots quite a bit. It's really hard to pass in the corners here. You almost always have to get a good run coming off of 1 or 3 to really make your passes here. You can typically get a pretty good draft if you're hit your corners right. So that's about the only opportunities you can really make your passes here.
Yeah, it sounds like that was the way it was tonight. And we're moving into Indianapolis next week. 2 races left still before the rest of the playoffs start. What's your mindset going into Indy, knowing you're really solid in the points, and how are you projecting yourself to win into the playoffs?
Yeah, just try to run a clean race. We had a good finish there last year. Just hoping to stay out of trouble and get another good points week. As I say, there's only a few races to go before the playoffs, so we need another good run.
Yeah, and we'll be looking for you to have another good run here in the MPI Cup Series at Indianapolis next week on Sunday. So congratulations on your 3rd place run tonight. Go celebrate with your Prestige Worldwide teammates, and we'll be seeing you next week at Indianapolis.
Will do. Thank you, guys.
A great finish put together for Austin Shoemaker, bringing it home 3rd in the Tricky Triangle, 2:25. And congratulations to our Podium Esports hard charger on the day, Justin Hendry. Started 27th, brings it home P11, a driver who only came into tonight 9 points above the cut line. And our geometry lessons continue from the triangle today to the rectangle at Indianapolis, the small oval at Bristol, guys. The last 2 races going to be a little bit chaotic. What do these guys need to do there on the cut line to get themselves into the round of 16 just 3 weeks from today?
Well, they have to perform. Simple as that. They have to show out these next 2 races, because at the end of the day, those 2 races are the only chances you have. And we've seen some fantastic battles out of the drivers on the cutoff. Even tonight, we're going to see a completely different picture of how that playoff run is going to look like in the top 16. So after this, when come to Indianapolis, when you come to Bristol, if you're behind on the point situation, you have to perform. You have to go out and try to win the race, because at this point, there's not much time left, and you really have to go for desperation heaves rather than methodical plans. But tonight, showing on the other side of the car, drivers who are locked into the playoffs, another solid composing run for Ray Rogers, and we usually see that each and every week. Just a solid performance, and again, able to dominate on the long runs and walk away with the win. And there's just 2 sides to the sword, Devin, that we're going to see in these playoffs that are just going to be so wild, between scrapping for the final point standings and the drivers who are comfortably in the points situation, walking away with wins and performing outright each and every week.
And Michael, the pressure is on. It's not just for the guys on the cut line to make the playoffs, but the guys with playoff points. You only have 2 more stages left, or 4 more stages, excuse me, and 2 more wins left to rack up those playoff points. The more you have, the more comfortable you are once you get to that round of 16.
Yep, those are very, very important. And there's already like the likes of Ray Rogers and Warren Cal Keith, and even the likes of Ryan Thomas, who are already building up sizable gaps. I mean, when it looks at the standings, Ryan Thomas has 15 playoff points. Ray Rogers added to his point total over 20 points already. Warren Cal Keith has 23 points. So that cushion, it's just like similar to real life with Kevin Harvick. I mean, he was safe the first round automatically almost with how many playoff points he had going into the first round of 16. So and once you build those level of points and these guys are at the top, you could just easily breeze through the first round and not even have to worry about it. All you have to do is just finish at that point. But for those guys towards the back with Kevin Hurley, John Kinder, Garrett Brown, those guys who have just a few playoff points when it comes down to it when we start the round of 16, these guys aren't going to be safe. And the likes of those at the back of the cutoff are going to have a chance to knock them out. So these next few weeks are going to be the time to perform.
2 more chances to write your name down in the book before you go for a hunt for the Season 3 MPI Cup Series Championship. Coming up next on Podium Esports on Monday, it is Anthony Alfredo's Esports Racing League. They're taking the car of tomorrow to Kansas. It's going to be slick. It's going to be loose. It's going to be a wild one tomorrow on Podium Esports. But that will conclude our coverage tonight here for the MPI Cup Series. For Dakota Curtis at the MPI Cup Series, for Gary Sexton, James Pike, Cisco Scaramuza, and John Theodore at Podium Esports, for our producer, Gary Sexton, and of course, both of my colleagues in the booth, it's Kenneth Bueno, Michael Guerrilla, I am Devin Henry. Thank you so much for watching tonight's broadcast of the MPI Cup Series from Pocono Raceway, and we look forward to seeing you next Sunday night, 9:15 Eastern, for round 14 of the series at Indianapolis Motor Speedway.